an underground place that allows nothing to come out, a place where only Shrank adventurers can enter, is known as the Forbidden Labyrinth. Due to his long history of swallowing several adventurers, he came to be spoken with great respect. This place is called Abyss, where once you enter, you will never see heaven again. One day, a party called Future Plan is preparing to enter a maze. A man in the group has someone check the cargo anchors. So he hears some voices and asks someone else what's going on. The person says that Garak, the leader of the Future Plan, is having a disagreement with a new member. The man sees a swordsman named Jir walking towards them and putting his hand on Godok's shoulder. Jir asks if they can stop arguing. He explains that as a newcomer, he kept quiet, but whether the girl is a baggage handler or not, it makes him uncomfortable seeing Godok treat her like that. Jir asks Godok to stop it. Godok questions whether Jir has a problem with how he does things. The baggage girl next to Jir tries to say something, but Jir stops with the hand gesture. He tells Godok he really has a problem with it. Jir adds that when he signed the contract with Godok, it did not include agreeing to everything Godok does. Godok is there, visibly angry, while Jir continues. He asks Godok if he will continue to complain about useless obstacles and burdens, even in the maze. Jir suggests that as they are about to challenge the hardest maze in the whole country, Godok should let him enjoy it a little. Godok looks directly into Jir's eyes, and without saying anything, turns his back. Before he leaves, he tells Jir not to work hard. Although Jir may be skilled with his sword, he is still a novice and must follow orders in the maze. Jir smiles and agrees to keep that in mind. Godok comes out, expressing frustration, telling Jir to stop relaxing and hurry. Jir looks back and sees the girl he supported. Smiling with a ponytail, he asks if she's Kraa, the new girl from the Future Plan. Kraa confirms with a smile and apologizes to Jir for taking a stand for her. Jir tells her not to worry about it, and suggests they go now. Kraa agrees, and they both sit in the carriage. The carriage begins to move, and Kraa mentions that Jir is the heir to a famous sword school. Jir Korra he despises, saying it's no big deal. Kraa then brings Godok, the team leader, informing her that Jir killed a dragon in an eastern country. Jir smiled proudly, sharing that he accomplished this feat with his master. He lies in the carriage, mentioning that he is traveling the country to defeat one alone, recognizing that he still has a long way to go. Watching Jir, Kraa makes sure he's okay. Jir confirms and praises her for not moving. Kraa, smiling, overthrows the situation, saying that anyone could handle it, but Jir disagrees. Unfortunately, she sees herself as just a novice support member and asks Jir if she can ask a question. Jir is quiet, and suddenly she asks how she can become stronger. Jir, surprised by the unexpected question, looks at her, and Kraa feels shame. Admit it's crazy someone like her asking. Jir says it's okay, but he wants to know why. Kraa, with tears in her eyes, reveals that she has always loved heroic stories since childhood, and dreamed of traveling as the characters of these stories. Jir asks if she diligently studied things like packing and making maps when she was old enough to become an adventurer. Realizing why she is good at these things, Jir then asks if, as adventuress now, she wants to improve her combat skills. Kraa energetically agrees. Jir points out that being an adventurer requires more than just survival skills. She also needs the skills to face monsters. Kraa is stunned and squeezes her fist, expressing frustration that no one will teach her these combat skills. She explains that when she joined the Future Plan, they promised advanced training to move from a supporting role to a leading one. However, training turned out to be vague instructions like learning by observation and giving up if you can't do it. Jir wonders if there is no internal system to train people. Kraa confirms, and Jir realizes that's why they're bringing in strangers like him to strengthen his team. Kraa laughs, recognizing his inexperience, but Jir finds this method irrational and something he does not agree with. Kraa, feeling a little embarrassed, admits it's very shameless to ask Jir all these questions. In response, Jir points out the finger and hypothetically presents a scenario where a dog monster or something similar is coming to Kraa. He asks what she would do in such a situation. Kraa says she would try to find him, and Jir advises her that it would be best to anticipate her attack in advance and set a trap. This suggestion shocks Kraha, and Jir explains that such strategies are somewhat cunning but effective. He emphasizes that there are no strict rules in battle, and everyone has different cards in their hands, determining when and how to use them. Kraha listens carefully as Jir explains. Using her finger, Jir emphasizes that the most important thing is to understand the card she holds and choose the best move possible. He assures Kraha that no matter how useless she thinks her hand is, there will always be a scenario where she can be useful. The more cards she has, the stronger she gets. Jir adds that a versatile card will have a great impact, and if it strengthens it, it can use it in different situations. In short, he says that training, experience and knowledge will increase your overall strength. Kra looks at Jir with a serious expression, while Jir smiles, sharing this advice. Kra asks Jir if he's a theorist, and Jir says he's just a challenger. He admits he can play a great game, but at the end of the day, he's just a swordsman. Jir explains that he is not good with anything else, and Krya can say that he chose a letter in his hand that he forces everything with, because all he does is observe people and turn their jealous feelings into logic. He further informs Kraha that his vision is really poor, and when he killed the dragon he put a curse on his eyes. Now, only physical improvements like increased hardness have any effect on it. Kraha gets very scared when Jir admits he has a bigger problem than the previous curse. His sense of direction is so bad that if he's alone in the maze, he may never find his way out. Besides, if he loses his glasses, it could be too dangerous for him. So just to be safe, he gives Krao his extra glasses to hold. The carriage stops suddenly, and they have reached their destination. Just before entering the maze, Jir offers to teach Kraha a simple card to fight. He can't be your official teacher or show you any fancy sword technique, but he can teach you the basics of sword fighting if she's interested. Krao quickly grabs his hand and bends deeply. Although it's just a little promise, it means a lot to her. They barely knew what was coming. Just 2 hours in the maze, Jir finds himself alone, his glasses broken, and the darkness approaches. The journey has become a dangerous and surprising situation, and now the group, who was confident before, doesn't know what will happen next in the deep abyss. Jir is thinking about how something really unexpected happened during the invasion of the maze. Everything was going well until that tense moment when they found a monster. He realizes that even the strongest Shrank adventurers have never passed the 3rd level of this super-hard maze. In his mind, he thanks the team for planning a good route that facilitated the movement even when they could not avoid finding enemies. Jir and his group now face a real danger when they meet the chief on the 3rd floor. These special monsters are on every floor, and they get a lot of magic power from the maze itself. Unlike other monsters, they don't walk around. Instead, they wait for adventurers in a room called the Chief Chamber. The Chief Chamber can be avoided and ignored, but not on the 3rd floor, as their group planned. Jir, being the first, attacks, holding his sword firmly. After Jir's accusation, it's time for them to follow his original plan. Now, in a unique formation where the vanguard draws all the attention of the enemy, Jir is satisfied with this plan, because all he can do is swing his sword, and it is natural for him to take the weight of the enemy's attacks. It's easier for him than worrying about others, and it's good physical training too. Jir looks back to see what is happening, as there is no logistical support, and there's Godok, the leader. Demonic swords, closely linked to man himself, disappear after using an excess mana. Godok, realizing that the chief of the ground is extremely strong, steps forward and unleashes his demonic sword. Jir looks at Godok, and Godok looks back, silently ordering him. Jir nods, indicating hell buys some time. Jir jumps into the air to attack the chief of the ground, and at the same time, Godok uses his power, the demonic sword. Unfortunately, Jir is within the reach of that power, and has shocked to realize that Godok didn't expect him to end his strike. Everything gets completely dark for a moment due to the brightness of Godok's power. Jir doesn't have time to avoid it, and a massive explosion occurs, creating a hole in the maze. Jir sees himself falling into that hole, thinking that only the chief's floor was his friend and no one else, as he sees that he's not alone in the fall. Finally, he can see the true face of his party leader. The floor chief, whom Jir briefly considered a friend, tries to attack him while both are in the air. However, Jir, showing his strong courage, fights with his sword and succeeds in defeating the head of the floor. Then he falls to the ground and stands there, breathing deeply, trying to understand what happened. He realizes the head of the floor was tough too, but then he sits and looks at the hole from which he fell. Climbing back seems impossible. Covered in sweat and anger inside him, he decides he'll never forgive Godok. I don't care what the reason behind this is. He wonders what was happening in Godok's mind to use such a dangerous technique on someone. He thinks about the argument they had before, and he wonders if that's why it happened. Jir screams loudly, expressing that he was almost attacked from behind, and when he leaves there, he will not be satisfied until he defeats Godok. After screaming and releasing his frustration, Jir wonders how he will escape. He remembers there are others at his party who are his friends, like Kraha. He thinks there's more girls like her who could help. He imagines that if they could throw a rope at him, then he could come out of the hole and punch Godok hard in the face. But first, he needs to get out of there, so he starts screaming for help. The scary roof terrifies him, but then he smiles, realizing he still has glasses. Fortunately, he takes them off and shouts that his glasses are fine, which is crucial because without them, he would not be able to continue. As long as he has them, he believes he'll be fine. Kraha sits on the floor, trying to understand what you just saw. She can't believe your eyes. She remembers the moments she met Jir, so she hears Godok's voice, saying it was an unfortunate accident. He adds that if the head of the third floor can bear a loose demonic sword, it is too much for them. So they're retreating. Kraha's eyes widen as she wonders if they're leaving Jir like this. The anger increases in her as she screams at Godok, accusing him of intentionally pointing to Jir. She points out that someone as skilled as he would not make such a mistake. Kraha says Godok he did it on purpose. Godok gets angry and raises Kraha by the neck. He threatens to ask her what she's going to do about it. Kraha responds that she's going to denounce Godok in guild for attacking a colleague from behind, breaking the rules. She adds that Godok is also responsible for the injuries caused in the maze by negligence and emergency evacuation. Kraha says Godok that no matter how he tries to get away from him, there were many witnesses to what happened. Godok looks into Kraha's eyes and demands to know where these supposed witnesses are. Kraha looks around, but everyone seems drained and silent. Godok smiles, telling Kraha no one saw anything. Kraha is shocked by everyone's silence. Godok rejects Kraha's accusations, calling her useless and claiming she imagined it all. He steps aside preparing to leave, and tells Kraha to dream everything she wants, but not to bother him, so he orders everyone to prepare to leave. Kraha is silent, shocked to know there's nothing she can do. She remembers trying to help Jir by reaching out her hand, but it didn't hit him. Suddenly, another adventurer named Holland comes to Kraha and encourages her to get out of it. He says if she leaves, she'll be in trouble, and Kraha, still in shock, asks Holland why everyone agrees with Godok. Holland explains that for them, Godok is everything. And there's only one first party in this country. If they're against Godok, they can't stay here. Kraha wonders if that's the only reason everyone supports Godok despite his wrong actions. Holland agrees and shares that he has a family to support as well. Kraha squeezes his fist with pain, a tear falls out of his eye, and says he can't leave things like that. She's determined to go, even if she has to go alone. However, Holland advises her that she can't do anything now. Kraha bows her head in sorrow, asking Holland if he's saying it's useless, even if she's going to save Jir alone. Holland blows a cigarette, agreeing with her and saying he can't do it now. He explains that he's not telling her to ignore the situation, but she's not strong enough right now. He makes sure it's a normal part of being adventurous, and this time she testified. He says there's nothing she can do now, and she squeezes her fist of frustration, saying she didn't become an adventurer to feel that way. Holland tries to comfort her by putting her hand on hers, but Kraha starts to cry. He says the only thing she can do is learn from someone like him, a professional adventurer. Kraha decides to stay with Holland, not renounce the party. She did want to be in this kind of situation, but she knows that leaving would not mean a future for her, and she would never be able to explore the abyss alone again. 3 months later. One day Kraha runs heavily, arriving at a stop in front of the maze. She thinks to herself as she looks to him that one day, when she descends into the maze once more and reaches the deepest level, she will bring Jer back to the surface, even if it's just a small fragment of it. Running into the abyss became part of her daily routine, and as she walks, cleansing her sweat, she perceives a large carriage, wondering if there is a noble in it. Looking at some sacred knights, she wonders about unity under the direct order of the church being present, as they usually take action only when it is time to seal a fallen king. She looks at them with curiosity, wondering if anything happened. Among the holy knights, she sees a girl with a stick in her hand. Some claim her as a saint, but the girl doesn't like that title because she thinks it doesn't suit her. Krau looks to Saint, thinking some thoughts not as pleasant about how useless she is, and even worse, what people are saying about her friend Jir. Rumor has it that Jir is gone, but deep in the mind, Krahau is determined to bring her friend back. No matter how much she has to turn, she's ready to go far, even if she can't do anything right now. She begins to walk toward Saint, telling herself in her mind that she cannot bear to be as she is now. One day, she believes she will become powerful enough to bring her friend back. Meanwhile, Jer sees some wolves carrying fish in their mouths, heading towards him. Fear appears on his face as he prepares, quickly beating the wolves with his sword until he can defeat all three. Breathing deeply in front of the corpses of the wolves, he warns them not to underestimate him. Jer declares that although he may look like a human, he has become a caveman, and these puppies cannot handle a turf war with him. Standing there, he reflects on the 3 months since the disaster. Eating the raw fish, he thinks it's disgusting. Realizing that he's close to the mental limit and that the taste of fish is horrible, Jer calculates that being here for 3 months means he's been putting up with it for almost 100 days. He believes he deserves a little compliment for holding this time without proper survival tools. While eating his fish, he suddenly sees a shiny crystal inside him. That makes you super excited because you think you can sell it for a lot of money. He speaks to a stone with a picture of Godok in it, sharing how he found the crystal. But out of nowhere, he throws the crystal away, saying he doesn't care what they think. It makes you feel like a roller coaster of emotions, going from happy to sad. He thinks about how people in civilized society have their limits. Feeling sad, he wonders if he's going crazy and questions what he's complaining about. Trying to cheer up, he pushes himself off the ground and decides that if he keeps moving up, he will eventually reach the surface. He says goodbye to the stone with Godok's photo, saying that they will meet again on the surface. He declares he's leaving and starts climbing. After walking for a while, he remembers a book he read about 2 types of people with a bad sense of direction. The first type is those who ignore any doubt and go in the wrong direction because they are not careful. The second type are those who doubt themselves a lot, even when they are going the right way. They keep changing paths and end up lost. He realizes that he is probably the second type because during his training, he kept asking questions and doubting himself, which gave him hard answers from his master. Although he's not sure, he decides to be confident and tells himself he's the second guy. He knows if he lets his doubts control him, he'll get even more lost. So he continues to reassure himself that he is not lost and continues to walk on the ascending path. While he keeps walking, he looks at the way and begins to doubt if he was going up a little behind or if it's just in his imagination. Confused, he stops and decides to deal with the issue of the wrong way after moving a little more. Unexpectedly, he steps on a button on the floor. Lack of self-consciousness, he realizes that he falls into the first category, the kind of person who shows no caution, acts without thinking, and easily gets caught in traps. Right now, he recognizes that he can be considered an idiot because he involuntarily activates the button without any signs of caution. After stepping on the button, Jira falls immediately into the trap. Shocked, he tries to get up, marveling at the cleverness of the trap. Suddenly, when he comes down, he feels something in front of him. in its humid state of water in the ditch. He sees a girl holding a bat. He looks at her by surprise, questioning in his mind if she is a person. The girl, realizing that Jira is wet and shocked, smiles and assures her in a friendly tone that she is really a person. Jira's expressions change as her brain struggles to process someone else's vision after so many days. The curious girl asks if she looks different in any way. Apologizing, Jira explains that she lost her glasses, affecting her vision, so he can't see properly. The girl plays with him and asks how many. Jira responds immediately with 30. 8. He wonders about the presence of a person instead of a monster in the trap, finding it hard to believe that a human would wait at the end of a large-scale trap like this. Suddenly, a monster came after the girl. Jira sees and holds his sword firmly, preparing to fight. The girl, still smiling, says again that she's not a monster. She doesn't know about the monster after her, but Jira's ready. Quick, he uses his sword skills, first the secret sword arts, then another one called Moon Dream, and cuts the monster into 2 pieces. After defeating the monster, Jira is very excited. He touches the girl's hands to make sure she's a person. Happy to find out she is, Jira looks at her with a big smile, and a clear excitement on her face can be seen. And the girl smiles back too. The girl sits on the floor and touches the ground with her fingers, feeling it like a groove. She informs Jira about it, who wonders what she means by groove. The girl suggests he touches the ground to feel it. She speculates that it's probably a magic circle and asks Jira for her opinion. Jira, admitting he's just a swordsman, expresses uncertainty. The girl ponders the situation, while Jira, standing nearby, reflects on how he ended up here. After a brief silence, Jira asks the girl if she is here to conquer the maze. She confirms, mentioning that the church brought her here. Jira wonders if he's wandering through these depths alone. The girl agrees, and Jira, looking at her with empathy, realizes that she was betrayed as well. He shares his own experience of being betrayed by the team leader while fighting a boss. The girl explains that's not what happened. Jira, confused, asks her to clarify, and the girl thinks she set off a teleportation trap, something she had read in adventure novels. Jira asks if she's discouraged, and the girl says it's not the case. The holy knights who accompanied her did a good job. They escorted her to the 4th floor, a place no one had arrived before. However, she began to feel slow, and it seems she was the only one trapped in the trap. Jira, shocked, wonders if she's not adventurous. The girl confirms that and asks if it's okay to share. After a moment, she tells Jira that she and the holy knights came to investigate the labyrinth. Jira, still confused, asks if she knows her own maze. The girl confirms, explaining that the church leader felt something sinister here 3 months ago. Unfortunately, she didn't realize at the time because she was lying in bed with a stomachache for eating too much for lunch. Jira asks if you can order anything. The girl smiles and asks, "What is it?" Jira says since she's from the church, she should be able to use sanitary magic. He asks her to fix it since he looks like a stray dog on a rainy day. The girl smiles and tells Jira that she didn't want to say at first, but he certainly smells like mud from a drainage ditch. Jira feels a little bad and asks if it's not too much, but the girl baked Jira pretty bad, telling him he really smells like that. She tells him not to worry and uses his magic on him. And in a few seconds, a flash appears in Jira. Jira feels the earth particles flying away from him, thinking that if he had only met her 3 days later, he would probably have returned to a completely wild state and attacked her without hesitation. However, after a few seconds, Jira looks fresh as if she had taken a bath. He thanks the girl for saving him and reports that he feels like a new person now. The girl's face seems a little confused, and Jira asks what the problem is. The girl asks Jira if her eyes are cursed, and Jira asks how she might know. The girl asks if she's snooping too much. Jira feels a little embarrassed, saying he's not trying to hide something, and he has an idea of how to break the curse. So she doesn't have to worry about it. The girl smiles, and Jira appreciates her again, saying she was impressed by her health magic and her recognition of curses. The girl blushes at Jira's compliments, and says he is also quite impressive. Jira is in trouble, wondering why she's praising him, and the girl tells him that this kind of crab monster is too strong, and Jira defeated him in a single attack. so has probably stronger than the holy knights. Jira, with a smile, ready to drop his sword, says this is the only thing he can trust. He looks at the two monsters behind the girl, and immediately uses his sword to attack them, killing them with a blow. Jira smiles and says they can't talk here, so he asks her to move. He asks if she can go with him, because he knows a safe place. The girl agrees, and they both start walking with big smiles on their faces. Jira says his camp isn't even 5 minutes away, but he was taken by the water, although he knows where it is. As there were many paths there, Jira again got lost and went in the wrong direction, which took 5 hours to reach the camp. After 5 hours in a row, they both look tired, and Jira apologizes to her for it, asking her to sit on the rocks. They both sit next to each other, and the girl says, "Let me formally introduce myself." Jira looks at her, and the girl, with a smile, presents herself as Lily Leah from the church. In response, Jira also introduces herself as Jira, and Lily Leah, while laughing, tells him that he can call her Lily or Leah, or even Big Sis. Jira wonders why Big Sis, and Lily says that despite her appearance, she's over 20. Jira, who is 19, begins to wonder how young she looks, and if she is really so old. Many questions about your hierarchy, class and society arise in your brain. Jira asks if he should speak more formally to her, and Lily says there's no need for that, because she likes it better since the people around her are always so muffled. Jira apologizes again, and Lily says it's okay, expressing her desire to be more frank as well. Jira feels relief and says she'd like to talk about your situation. Lily says there's no need, since she's heard it. Jira looks at her with a confused face, and Lily informs him that before entering the maze, a pretty gray-haired girl asks her to take care of Jira. Jira wonders if she was Kraha, thinking he thought she had been abandoned, but realizing Kraha hasn't forgotten him yet. He thinks if it had been him, he would have assumed that someone was dead, especially if they hadn't returned after 3 whole months, particularly in the most difficult maze. Tears fall out of his eyes as he realizes Kraha is still certain that Jira would be alive, but Lily reports that Kraha asked her to bring it back even if it was just his bone. Jira understands it makes sense now, since has been stuck here so long. He feels good after realizing that at least one of his friends is worrying about him. Lily asks Jira how deep he is and why he's in this place alone. Jira explains that he was shot down at first, leaving Lily in shock. He says he doesn't know if it was intentional or not, but he ended up being attacked from both sides by the floor chief and a guy from the same party as him. Since then, has been out there trying to find a way up, but has never been able to find the original floor. As the days passed, he began to return to a caveman. As he murmured to himself and walked without fear, he was carried away by the water. And suddenly Lily was right in front of his eyes. With a smile, he thanks Lily for saving him from the caveman's curse. Lily tells Jira that he is too thin for a caveman, and Jira responds, saying that it is difficult to increase when he travels constantly and he cannot build a large stable stock of food. Lily agrees, saying that Jira's party guy was so mean, and they'll protest him when they leave. She tells Jira she'll go with him too. Jira: "Thank you, and you wonder if that's the attitude of an older sister." Jira, then returning to the topic, says that even if he starts on a lower floor, he must be making good progress in returning to the surface in the last 3 months. Then they should be able to get out of here eventually. Lily, with a smile, asks if that means they need to keep going up, and Jira, with a serious face, confirms it. Jira asks Lily if she knows there are bosses here, and Lily says she knows about them. Jira explains that she knows the way to the next floor, but there is a great monster he cannot defeat now. Jira explains that he has already found his way to the next floor, but a monster is blocking him. He mentions that the monster is not necessarily stronger than him, but it's incredibly difficult, and he can't see weak spots to explore with his sword. Unfortunately, looking at his sword, he informs Lily that if he tried to stab the monster with his strength, his sword would break. Lily asks if having your glasses would make a difference, and Jira answers that she doesn't want to make excuses. The truth is, he admits, he's inexperienced, and with more skill, he could force his way. That's why he's been training there for a while. He adds it's convenient with a well of water, so he doesn't have to fight to find something to drink. Lily asks him in confusion, "What do you mean watering hole?" And she calls Jira blind like a bat. Jira wonders why you're telling him this. Lily dips her hand in the fluid and asks Jira if he really thought it was water. Jira's facial expressions disappear, and he tells Lily to stop it because it sounds scary. Lily looks at Jira with a smile and says she'll wipe the inside of Jira's stomach later. And for now, let's go to the camera. Jira says his stomach is hurting now, and he can't kill that monster. Lily blinks at Jira and says Big Sis is awesome, so she'll help him win easily. She does a funny pose, telling Jira that she'll make him a real caveman. Jira wants to know if you're going to do this with the enhancement spell. Lily smiles and confirms it. Jira says it's useless, saying she's saving her strength now, and the real problem is your sword, because it won't be able to withstand your strength. Lily asks if it's cheap, and Jira says she's so blind. Lily points out that Jira claimed to be a humble swordsman who knew nothing about magic, and she thought he was stronger than the Sacred Knight. Jira disagrees, saying that she never claimed to be stronger than her holy knights, and asks her not to make good changes in her words. He explains that no matter what kind of sword you use, hitting hard can break. That's why he likes to have a spare sword ready, and he bought this case that the old one broke. He adds it wouldn't be a problem if he could find the right place to attack. But before he finishes, Lily comes in and asks if it's because she doesn't have glasses. With sad eyes and frustration, Jira agrees. Lily, with a smile, asks Jira how many times it would take to beat the boss. Jira, sitting on a rock, answers once. He looks into Lily's eyes and explains that if he can swing with his full force only once, he can kill him. Lily approaches, saying he's very confident. Jira blushes a little, saying she learned from past experiences, so it's the truth. However, he adds that if he does, he will no longer have a weapon, making things more difficult. Lily sits in front of Jira, who is holding her sword with a sad look. Lily shows her brilliant finger to Jira, who seems confused. Lily touches her bright finger on Jira's sword and says she'll give her a second swing as a bonus. Jira, still confused, look at your sword. Lily says the magic sword is now incredibly strong and will never break. Jira seems completely shocked. Lily laughs and asks Jira why he's so surprised by his sacred magic. Jira stands up, holding his sword, wondering if sacred magic is something mentioned in the writings of the Church of Rasti. Lily laughs and says it looks like a book for kids to read out loud. That's where she remembers, at least. Jira raises her sword and looks at her shiny blade with a serious face, wondering what it is. Lily says it's not the strongest sacred sword, but more like a fake. Jira expresses her gratitude to her. Lily laughs loudly and wonders if Jira is a knight from 300 years ago. Lily, with a smile, tells Jira that she'll keep it in her previous promise. Lily asks Jira how far the boss is. Jira estimates about 10 minutes of walking. Lily says it's going to take about 30 minutes. Jira gets upset for doubting him, and Lily laughs in response. However, they begin to walk, and after 3 hours, they finally reach the gate. Both stand in front of the door, tired, and the sweat is dripping from their faces. Lily teases Jira, saying that when someone says they've been somewhere many times, they should find it easier to get there. Jira, exhausted, admits she never remembers a single milestone and apologizes to Lily. Lily, with a sad, tired expression, asks if you should go now. Jira opens the door, and they both see the huge one-eyed monster in front of them. The monster howls and Jira pulls his sword, saying he's still a little too clumsy to call it a direct attack. Lily watches him, wondering what he's doing. Suddenly Jira looks directly into the eyes of the monster and carries it. Lila's shocked by the scary howl, but Jira without fear uses his ray of skill and can cut the monster's mouth into many pieces. Lily sees Jira struggling nervously, while Jira, after defeating the boss, thinks in her mind that she may need more practice. After Jira defeats the monster, he puts his sword out and stretches his neck. Lily, smiling, asks if he's okay and asks if the lining of the sword was weaker than expected. Jira smiles back and says it's okay. He's just surprised because it was the first time he used that movement without breaking his sword. Lily laughs and teases him about talking big, but not delivering. Ajira looks at her, realizing she's not ordinary. The spell she used must be very advanced for a normal church member. He wonders if she's as strong as senior church officials. Lily gets it. Jira thinking and trying to get him out of it. Jira, lost in contemplation, wonders if a skill like Lila's is difficult for someone as young as her. He remembers Lily saying she's 20 thinking she might be an experienced woman named Lily with a young, beautiful voice. Lily sits there, wondering why Jira keeps looking at her without saying anything. While Jira, lost in her thoughts, looks at Lily and wonders if he's an idiot. Jira starts looking at the roof, and Lily asks if he's crying. But Jira says you're feeling a little shocked. No doubt. Only the last 3 months in the cave have turned Jira into an idiot. Lily goes to the monster's corpse, and Jira looks at her in confusion, wondering if she's wondering what kind of monster she was. Jira, with a disappointed face, tells her that all he can see is a blurry silhouette, so even now he hasn't figured it out yet. Looking at the monster, Lily thinks of many different animals, and Jira wonders what she's thinking. Meanwhile, Lily even contemplates the planets and the solar system, finally saying it could be a horse-like monster because it has 4 legs. Jira also thinks that makes sense. Lily suddenly realizes something and says, "Not everything." Jira wonders what you're talking about. Lily gets up and asks Jira if they should continue while she points her finger at the door. Jira asks first if you can tell her anything. Lily, with confusion, looks at Jira. Jira, with an embarrassed smile, tells her he has a terrible sense of direction. He unfortunately mentions that he searched the floor thoroughly, so he thinks the door in front of them should lead to the upper floors. However, he admits that he is not very confident about this. If she thinks they're going the wrong way, he's asking her to warn him. Lily walks towards you and holds your hand, leaving Jira in shock. Lily, with a smile, tells Jira it's okay because from now on, they'll choose the way together. Lily tells Jira happy that he can count on her because she loves looking at atlases. Jira looks at her in trouble. I wonder what atlas is. Lily's face lights up, telling him not to worry, making sure everything's okay. She starts telling Jira that she rarely leaves home once or twice a year. She mentions she doesn't like to travel either. Jira looks at her, wondering what she's talking about, while Lily keeps talking. She explains that she's a real person who loves being home, but she still likes to read travel logs and guides and stuff. However, after telling Jira about herself, she smiles and tells Jira that he can rest easily on the boat that are her hands. Jira's expression changes from sadness to happiness, and he says, "So it looks like I'm in good hands." Lily laughs and makes sure Jira doesn't worry. While Jira has some trust issues as well, because once he was tricked by his master into boarding a luxury passenger ship, where he was forced to fight desperately against a stupid amount of giant squid monsters. Meanwhile, Lily asks Jira what he thinks about where they should go. Jira answers that his sixth sense is telling him to go left. Lily said she was thinking the same thing too. However, there is only one way to die. Lily says she looks like Jira and she thinks the same. However, when Jira begins to worry, there is only one way for him to feel comfortable, and that is to move on. In this way, Lily's double energy do and Jira double strengthen down 50 floors in a month. They laughed and spent quality time with each other, becoming good friends in the meantime. With that, their adventure continued. Jira lifts the boat up, with Lily sitting and looking at the roof. Lily mentioned they haven't surfaced yet. Jira starts breathing hard, and Lily asks if he's okay, and if she's heavy. Jira says it's okay, and that's just another kind of training for him. Lily, after hearing your answer, confirmed that his saying she's heavy. Jira gives no answer, making Lily feel a little embarrassed. Suddenly Jira looks at Lily with a smile and says it's not even enough for training. He can feel the whole body losing muscles while talking. Lily's face glows as she speaks, saying yes. Lily says she thinks they've gone up too high and this maze is too deep. Jira, without saying anything, is still breathing a lot. Lily gets frustrated and says she wonders how the Holy Knights are doing. She hopes they're not crazy that she disappeared. She looks at the roof and says that maybe she's too selfish to ask. She wonders how you're going to apologize to them when you get back, assuming everyone's going to be mad at her. Meanwhile, Jira, after resting for a while. take the boat again and start walking. He says has been thinking it might just be his imagination, but he thinks it's time he mentioned it. Lily wonders what he's talking about, and Jira, after breathing, questions with frustration if they are lost. Lily looks at Jira's face covered in sweat and remains silent. Jira, frustrated, starts talking. He knows he fell from a distance when he fell from the third floor, but he doesn't think he went that far. He insists that there is no way that he fell so far that he would not be able to reach the surface even after continuously climbing up for 4 months. Lily tells Jira that it's impossible, but Jira's the one with the hand and says it's hard to recognize his own mistakes, and is painfully aware of that fact. He asks Lily if she doesn't think it's time they accepted the mistake. His frustration increases as he says maybe there are idiots advancing at breaking speeds on the completely wrong path. Lily looks at Jira with a serious face and asks if he knows there are 2 kinds of people with a bad sense of direction. Jira stays silent and listens to her. Lily smiles and points her finger at Jira, saying that the first type are those who continue on a genuinely wrong path. But it's not them. Jira asks her why they're not in that category. Jira claims that all the time they were traveling, they chose their paths together based on intuition. Lily asks Jira how many times they've been divided into her opinions. Jira's eyes widen as he responds not once. Lily smiles, saying there's no way 2 people choose the wrong way, and the odds of both of them having a bad sense of direction. It would be so astronomically low that it would be virtually impossible. In shock, Jira asks if she really thinks so, beginning to doubt that they've trampled on everything. However, Lily continues her sentence, saying that the second type of person with a bad sense of direction is someone who is initially going the right way, but gets overwhelmed with anxiety and intentionally flees the wrong way. Hearing this, Jira remains in shock, staring at Lily while hiding her face with her hand. He asks if she thinks that's what he's doing now. Lily walks past him and confirms he's right. She tells Jira that most things will end well in the end if he stays out. Jira asks her what happens if they stay out and nothing happens. Lily smiles and opens her arms, saying that in this case, they'll know there's nothing there and return to their original path. Jira looks at her in shock, and Lily realizes a great monster behind Jira. Her smile disappears immediately. Jira realizes his expressions while he feels something behind him. Immediately, he unleashes his sword and attacks the monster, killing him in an attack. He mentions that her answer not only raises a good point, but 25 good points. With that, he agrees and thinks it would be useless to come back now after over 120 floors. Lily, with a smile, asks him if he's feeling better. Jira confirms when she leans, saying that this was very educational and referring to Lily Reed as an instructor. Lily looks at him with confusion, but keeps smiling all of a sudden, saying, "Keep learning, Jira, my boy." Jira blush as they look at the way. Lily told him they hit a fork on the road. Both point in the right direction together. Looking at each other with a smile, both respond at the same time, choosing the same direction. With this, both began to go in the right direction, eliminating their doubts, and continued. Little do they know, the path they have chosen will lead them through a gulch untouched by light, bringing them even further down. So they both stop and start eating. Lily eats raw fish and Jira drinks water. Lily, with a sick expression, comments that she tastes so bad and she wants to cry. On the other hand, Jira, after drinking water, exclaims that it is so good. He mentions it's enough for him, while Lily looks at him and keeps eating the fish, expressing how bad it is. But because none of them could start a fire, they had to eat the raw fish. And by the water, thanks to Lily and her health magic, she cleaned the water with her ability. After the meal, she uses her magic to clean both hands. Jira looks at her with a smile and thanks Lily for helping him. Lily yawns and says now it's time for her to take a nap. She asks Jira if he'll keep training. Jira confirms and thinks of her brain that without Lily's help he would not be able to defeat the horse-riding boss. He tells himself it's getting harder and harder to beat the bosses in this area by his own power, and he still has a long way to go. Lily hears him and looks at him with angry expressions. She said she knew Jira still couldn't take it. Jira looks at her, wondering if she really heard everything he said, and tries to explain herself. Lily gets sad, expressing that she may have done something unnecessary. She still says how disappointing it is to be seen as a nuisance. Jira tries to explain to her, saying he wasn't trying to imply that he doesn't need help. However, Lily, without listening to him, mentions how she endeavored to learn magic to help people. She holds the liquid from the floor, and with a smile asks Jira how he tries to drink the swamp water. On seeing this, Jira apologizes to her as she realizes that she helped them clean the water that he drank and enjoyed it so much. But he claims he is asking for help and wants to work hard to ensure that he is not ashamed to accept that help. Lily, still smiling, asks him if he wants that water, and Jira says it's just a habit or some kind of satisfaction for him. He then asks Lily, how about you get back to what started this discussion? He begins to explain to her that he understands that people can only continue because they receive support from others. For example, someone made him glasses, and he cannot make clean water. He explains that swordsmen tend to think of themselves. However, Lily smiles and says she's joking. Jira's face remains in shock, wondering if she was playing all the time. Lily confirms, laughing, and asks Jira if has ever been called handsome before. Jira confirms that he was never called handsome, and even his master said that he is not handsome and very naughty. Lily agrees, saying she can see this too, which makes Jira feel bad. Lily laughs and says that sometimes Jira starts talking more formally, and it would be better if he were more direct. She laughs, saying she thinks it's cute when he's trying to force himself not to use formal language. Her face shines as she keeps laughing, saying that teasing younger men is always very much fun, while Jira looks at her annoyingly. Jira makes gestures, warning Lily to leave the matter, and he asks her to sleep. Lily agrees and wishes him a good night. After that, Jira starts walking, thinking Lily can be troublesome sometimes. He keeps repeating that thought. When he gets to the swamp water river, he sits next to him with his legs crossed. While there, he begins to contemplate Lily, and their cheeks are chore. He wonders if you're in love with her. He thinks to himself that he cannot concentrate on training because of it, remembering the advice of his master not to get involved with women. He remembers his master, who divorced 5 times. 5 years ago, Jira told his master that he was the master who was wrong in the head. Without even thinking, his master worked with him several times more than before. Sitting there, Jira thinks his master's words have some weight, and he was avoiding approaching women until now. However, he feels that he is becoming inevitable. Reflecting on the 3 months spent alone in the maze without seeing the light of day, he remembers hanging around in a dirty state until Lily, a woman of good nature, appeared. He realizes that he spent a month alone with Lily and began to develop feelings for her. Looking at the ceiling, he recognizes has never felt that way before. He had a guardian until 3 years ago, when his master suffered a back injury while fighting a poisonous dragon. He tells himself he doesn't want to end up as his master. He remembers how his master went on a trip and asked Jira to find an optical or something. Since then, Jira has been on her own. People often see him as their intern, and many would say unpleasant things to him. They often challenged him to prove himself, making it difficult for him to approach women. He thinks to himself that now is his chance. Considering how Lily holds her hand after eating and how beautiful her smile is. However, he tries to calm down and meditate because he does not want to create any problems. He reflects that even the protective barrier around them is created by Lily to protect them from monsters. He believes it would be unfair to express his feelings in these circumstances, especially when no one's around to help you if necessary. And outside the barrier, there are many monsters. In such a situation, it would be easy for Jira to press for a quick response. However, he quickly nods his head to discard these thoughts and tries to calm down. He clears his mind, deciding that he will only tell her about his feelings after they leave the maze. Suddenly, when he begins to meditate, a thought passes through his mind. What if Lily's 80? His eyes widen in shock when he considers that the power of the clergy rises in his last years, and a young man could not use holy magic so skillfully. He believes Lily may be near 80 because he only saw a blurry outline of her body, not even her face. He also assumes that the only reason she holds his hand is to cast spells, not because she has feelings for him, and he calls himself a fool. In his thoughts, he imagines Lily as a cheerful woman with cute habits and soft hands that smell incredibly good, but also 80 years old. He convinces himself that there is no doubt about it, and shouts to himself that this is the truth. Suddenly, Lily hears him screaming from behind and asks what's wrong. Jer had a big shock because he didn't realize Lily was there. Lily complains to him for screaming in her face, and Jer apologizes, asking what's going on. Lily explains that she thought Jer was cold in her sleep, so she used her magic. Without touching Jer, she creates a warm disguise on him, and Jer perceives her using magic. Jer suddenly feels warm, and Lily mentions it'll last for the next 10 hours, advising him not to stay up late. Jer wonders if she did the magic without touching it, and he asks her to confirm. Lily says you don't have to touch him for that magic since you've been practicing. She's leaving. Jer is there in shock, questioning why she touches his hands when she casts the sanitation spell after they eat. He looks at Lily, who's going back to sleep, and he squeezes his fist. He murmurs to himself that even if she is an 80-year-old woman, with this, we really don't know what Jer is going to do, or what's going on inside his head. But your adventure certainly continues. Kraha sleeps quietly, and in her dream she sees Jer falling from a deep place. Suddenly she wakes up, realizing it was just a dream. After getting ready, she left home, reflecting in the last 4 months, where her daily routine has not changed. She wonders about the sacred nights she found, and hasn't heard anything since. Everything seems unchanged, as if nothing happened. As she runs, she thinks of it as a dream only she knows. Stopping to catch her breath, she contemplates how her daily life continues to walk like a wheel, with only seasons changing, and now autumn is ending. She breathes deeply, and suddenly Holland shows up, saying that the young are impressive. Kryle looks at him and asks if he's doing solo training. Smoking the cigarette, Holland casually mentions it's nothing serious, as just keeping his kids company while they're complaining about gaining weight. He explains they're right behind us, and he left them in the dust without noticing. Krya hears it as it stretches, and Holland keeps smoking and breathing deeply. He observes Kraha and comments that she is covered in sweat, asking how far she runs. Krya shares that she runs at least an hour a day and makes 5 series of 10 sprints with different distances and shifts included. She mentions that it depends on the day, and today she had planned to do 10 ascent races without using any special impulses. Holland smiles and praises her, saying a quick adventurer is good. He adds that she may not like listening, but Krahow insists she's okay with it. She seems confused, but Holland advises her not to hurt her body too much, and mentions that the church can heal most injuries. However, he emphasizes that no matter how skilled she is, once something bad happens, it can be challenging to recover. Suddenly, they notice some carriages of the church approaching. Holland talks about the moment, calling it the devil. Crow agrees, and Holland notes that church followers are accustomed to getting up early. He suggests they've been working hard. Crow looks at them, pondering, while Holland keeps smoking his cigarette. In his thoughts, Kraha wonders if they finally discovered anything important. But Holland talks to Kraha about how these fancy carriages aren't common in this town, and he thinks they only started showing up last month. He mentioned it wasn't the church doing it back then. Kraha wonders if more knights are on their way, and Holland explains that the church also has knights. He says the knights don't usually act unless it's something big, like stopping the fallen king from coming back. Close his eyes, he takes a deep breath, thinking he might be thinking too much. Meanwhile, Lily looks down, worried she may have caused Jer trouble. All of a sudden, Holland hears his name being screamed from a distance. He gets up and sees his tired children slowly running towards him. They ask how long he has been waiting, and Holland, laughing, calls them lazy while smoking a cigarette. Krya stands still, watching them quietly. Holland says you can't stop being afraid of beautiful, real things. Meanwhile, Holland wishes you good luck. While he leaves, Holland tells Kraha that he believes that one day she will become a much better adventurer than he does, at least. Lily, with a serious expression, promises to give you the best effort. After finishing her training, Kraha goes to the home of a holy knight named Arlene, as she was invited by her. Arlene apologizes to Kraha for calling late at night. Kraha makes sure it's okay, since she owes her one. Both take a sip of tea. Kraha wonders why Arlene wants to talk to her. Arlene asks Kraha to tell us what happened to the party if anything happens. Kraha gets confused, wondering what Arlene's talking about, and asks for clarification. Arlene confirms that her group gave up attacking Abyss. Kraha remains in shock and unanswered. Arlene wants to know if her group didn't report Kraha. With a sad expression, Kraha confirms, but mentions that she knew in a way. She explains that she asked Godok directly what happened, and Godok replied, saying they've already given up the attack. Arlene asks Kraha what happened in that maze, and wonders what could cause a party that went up to Shrank to throw the towel so easily, especially because they didn't even lose a single member of the party after trying just once. Listening to this, Kraha's eyes remain wide open, wondering if Jir was ever recorded at the party. Meanwhile, Aline, still ignoring the real situation, takes another sip and says she would understand if they had suffered larger-scale losses, but it makes no sense to cancel the attack after an offensive attack. Kraha continues to look down, lost in her deep thoughts and blinking back to everything that happened in the maze, while Arlene continues to speak. She says all she can imagine is that just like them, these guys must have had problems of unknown origin in the maze. Arlene again asks Kraha why Godok gave up, but Kraha remains silent, drowned in her thoughts. She wonders if it was probably because Godok performed what he proposed to do, and maybe it wasn't just an unforeseen accident. Maybe from the beginning, his only goal was to kill Jir. However, she remains clueless about such actions of Godok, considering if he really needed to kill Jir. Suddenly, Arlene calls himself Kraha, realizing that Kraha was silent, lost in her thoughts, and not attentive to hear Arlene. After she gets back to talking, she gets embarrassed and apologizes to Arlene. She asks if it's a problem of unknown origin. Arlene's confirmation if she heard right about Arlene mentioning the same thing happened to her as well. Arlene, you seem confused. Ask Kraha what she means. After remaining silent for a few seconds, Kraha becomes sad and reveals that during her descent to the abyss, they lost track of one of the four saints, Lelia, after she was caught in a teleportation trap. Kraha remembers the saint she saw with the holy knights and listens carefully Arlene. Arlene says it may sound like an excuse, but there was something strange about that dungeon. Kraha, in shock, wonders what was strange, and Arlene tells him that during all the original exploration accompanied by the saint, they were more on guard than normal, avoiding fights whenever possible and acting with extreme caution. She further explains that the magical circle of teleportation was so worn out that it should not have been able to function, but activated only when the saint passed over it. Arlene asks Kraha if it doesn't remind her of traps that can only be triggered by a specific target, but Kraha refuses, saying it's not true. Kraha explains that she heard that most traps in magical and dungeon circles occur naturally and are not complex enough to designate a specific target. Arlene, with a serious face, confirms that Kraha is right, and the knights who began as adventurers also mentioned the same. She squeezes her fist, expressing that she can handle failure, but cannot tolerate a failure of unknown origin. Arlene informs Kraha that there is something in that labyrinth, and even the investigation was ordered by the four saints themselves. She explains that's why she needs to know what happened to Kraha's party, and why all the other members are sealed. Arlene asks Kraha why Godot gave up the attack and asks about the dead friends mentioned when they spoke. Kraha looks down in sadness, remains silent, contemplating the incident that occurred in the labyrinth. Arlene insists on giving answers, asking Kraha what she knows. Kraha sits there quietly, with the weight of the incident increasing in her mind every second. The next day, Kraha goes to the restaurant to eat something, and there she sees a boy whose hair she admires. In her mind, she wonders if as a boy or a girl. The boy greets her with a smile and asks if he can sit next to her. Kraha moves to the next chair, releasing a seat for him. He sits next to her, apologizes, and Kraha, minding his own business, starts eating noodles. In her mind, while eating pasta, she thinks Arlene, who she met last night, was also beautiful. The kid looks at the menu and smiles. He asks Kraha what's the most tasty thing there. Kraha, in shock, looks at him, realizing he's so close to her. She looks at the menu and tells her the Hamburg steak meal is a classic dish there. The boy asks Kraha if it's not his first time here. Kraha looks at him while smiling and asks what she would recommend. Kraha asks him to wait and let her think. She says everything will be tasty here, but the meat dishes are particularly large. She suggests that if she had to pick something popular with regular customers, she doesn't think he could go wrong with the special. She explains that it comes with 3 portions of pork chop and as many rice fillings as he wants, and it's enough to fill the stomach of any man, woman, or child. The boy is happy when he is ready to give an order, but Kraha immediately says it would be difficult for someone who does not eat much to finish. And if he doesn't eat it all, the owner gets a little upset. The boy thanks Kraha for telling him, flexes his hand, and says that's exactly what he wanted to hear. He smiles, and asks the waiter to give you 2 specials. Kraha, the waiter, and even the owner looked at him in shock, wondering if he's really asking too. The waiter immediately notes his order, and Kraha explains to him that ordering 2 whole portions is madness. This special has buried reckless challengers before and is enough to satisfy even the hungry customer. The owners created this meal specifically with the desire to make people so full after they would feel that they were about to appear on the way home. It emphasizes that it is the essence of the owner's love and tenacity. With shock and panic, she tells him that if he leaves something on the plate, the owner will be angry, while the boy is silent, waiting for his food. Suddenly, the waitress brings her order, 2 specials. Kraha, including the owners, looks at him in shock. The boy guarantees Krao not to worry. Calling himself a glutton, he starts eating the food, and in seconds, he immediately finishes both dishes. Everyone there can't believe it's really possible, while the boy, with his belly full, tells them the food was good. After eating, he asks the waitress to bring in what Kraha was eating. Kra, with a shocked face, asks why he's having pasta, explaining that she doesn't have much appetite, so she asked for it. The kid thinks while he looks at Kraha and says she doesn't look like a bad person. Kraha looks at him, wonder what he just said, but the kid just smiles at him. He then eats the remaining food and thanks Kraha for telling him about a good meal. He asks the owner to tell him what the bill is, and after paying in a hurry, he starts walking towards the store exit, muttering to himself that he will solve things himself. Kraha sits in his chair with the food, watching the boy when he leaves the store. Suddenly, after eating at the restaurant, the boy enters the maze and finds Lily and Jir playing thumb wrestling. Lily, with a smile, and Jir, in shock, look at him while he greets them. Jir wonders why someone else is here and asks if a person can exist in this place. The boy looks at them and thinks they must have gotten lost, concluding they're probably good people. Kid tells Jir not to worry. He presents himself as Eunice and assures them that he is not up to anything obscure. Jir and Lily find Eunice extremely dark while they sit around the fire he made. Eunice sits on a rock and asks Jir if his glasses are broken and he can't see anyone's face. Jir confirms and Lily and Jir look shockingly at the fire. After looking at the flames for a while, Lily, with a smile, tells Jir that the fire has finally reached her little village. Jir smiles and agrees. Eunice starts laughing as she hears them talking, and then Jir and Lily lie down to sleep. However, Eunice asks if they can wait at least until he finishes talking. Lily, lying asleep, mentions the fire, and Eunice reports that she can start a fire anytime. He then begins to tell them about Kraha's future plan and the Sacred Knights of the 4th Squadron, led by Captain Arlene. Jir and Lily look at him with shock, and ask how he knows about them. Eunice smiles and introduces herself as Eunice, the Archmago das Estrelas, a search party for a person. In shock, Jir looks at Eunice and Lily asks if he is famous for being the youngest Archmago recorded in history. Eunice smiles and confirms, expressing a little shock that they are close at age, and he thought they would be more aware of each other. He goes to Jir by the name of the Great Toxic Dragon Hunter and Lily by the name of a Holy Island Savior. Listening to this, Lily and Jir look in shock, because they didn't know each other's achievements. Eunice laughs at the surprise that they don't even know each other despite working together for so long. He wonders what in the world they've been doing all this time. Jir, with a little shame, says, "Catch fish, drink tasty water, and thumb fight." Eunice, after hearing this, it seems like it would be a lot of fun. After that, Eunice asks how they managed to get here, mentioning that it was easier for him than for both of them. He reveals that he made use of the magic circle, which teleported Santa Lily from the 4th floor and followed his trail. Lily's face seems surprised while Jir is still confused. Eunice, however, tells Lily that he should be the only one to be surprised because the two were not satisfied with simply surviving. They even managed to dive into those depths with just the two of them. Eunice says that their assessments at the height of mankind in terms of skill were certainly not wrong. Lily blushes when she hears it, while Jir looks at the roof and screams loudly, expressing that she knew they were still coming down. Lily looks at him with disappointment and asks him to count as a valuable learning experience. Jir asks if she'll turn him around. Irritably, he claims that he always agrees with everything, so the person who listens to him is also guilty. Getting more agitated, he insists that everyone take responsibility for their actions. Lily looks at him for a while, smiles, apologizes to him and recognizes that he's right. Defeated and lying on the ground, Jir reflects that the one who initially went in the wrong direction was none other than himself. They share the same responsibility for their journeys together, but all before that was entirely his fault. Has worried that if Lily decides to point that out, she might have to crawl on her knees. However, Lily begins to point out that she was the one who started going in the wrong direction, but Jir cuts her and yells at Eunice, asking if he is here to rescue them. With a smile, Eunice confirms that he assumed that they would find a boss walking on a higher level, putting them at a disadvantage, and as a result, they were simply stranded. However, he did not expect to find them so deep. Eunice asks if they were planning to conquer this place alone, but Jir refuses and informs them that it was not their plan. Eunice continues, saying that if they were planning to do this, then their proposal is out of the question. Listening to this, Jir gets angry, repeatedly saying no and losing control of your emotions. He sheds tears, expressing that's not what they were doing. It's just that they both have bad sense of direction. Jir explains that they have been trying to get out all the time, but instead, they kept going deeper and deeper. With a sad face, he allows Eunice to laugh at them if he wants. However, hearing that, Lily starts laughing loudly, and Jir told her he didn't ask her to laugh. Eunice starts thinking, and Jir wonders what he's thinking. Eunice says it's nothing, smiling, and says it's an interesting coincidence that both have bad sense of direction. Jir expresses a bad feeling about this, but Eunice makes sure it's unrelated. He knows both. Eunice reveals that Jir is the innocent swordsman hero who killed the toxic dragon that had appeared in an eastern country, and Lily is the saint who stopped an island from sinking. Jir mentions that her master helped him, and Lily adds that she also had the help of the islanders. But Eunice, with a smile, points his finger at them and asks if they know anything about him. Lily guesses if it has anything to do with the stars, and Jir asks if he's the youngest archer in history. Eunice tells them he's out of his league, so he doesn't know. Lily wants to know if it was Eunice who created a new kind of magic. Eunice, still smiling, confirms when she starts using her magic with her fingers. He explains that there are some specific requirements for something to be considered magical, and he wonders how he can explain it to them. Making some orbits of stars in front of them, Eunice says that if he were to follow his clues and act modestly, he would say that he only got here thanks to knowing his master at first. Confused, Jir asks Eunice to hold him and inform him that he could not follow what Eunice is talking about. Eunice explains Jir in simpler words than her magic takes powers from the stars. Jir finds it hard to believe, and Eunice reveals that he has the title of Archer, allowing him to use this power even in places where starlight does not reach. He mentions being able to use his magic at his current location. Jir's curiosity increases, and he asks Eunice with frustration to get to the point. Holding his shirt, he gets angry, claiming his heart is about to burst. Eunice smiles and asks if that's true. He responds with a big smile and a thumb up, saying he is happy to help in a place like this, but mentions that his power is reduced by 80%, making it completely useless. Upon hearing this, Jir loses patience for a moment and shouts loudly, expressing his need for a pause. Here, we have a unique trio. A swordsman with a bad sense of direction, a clergy with a bad sense of direction, and a new wizard who is also no less than an idiot. A bunch of idiots get lost here at the bottom of the maze, but at least now they know they were always going the wrong way. Eunice walks in the swamp water and wonders if they've been trapped on the ground in the last 3 weeks. Jir confirms and shows Eunice the real problem. They point to a huge door, which surprises Eunice. Jir counts. Eunice, even when he struck with the sword, there was no answer. Eunice keeps looking at the door, and Lily also confirms what Jir just said. However, Lily tells Eunice that she knows there's something like a magic circle engraved on the surface of that door, but she can't see it clearly because it's solid black. Eunice agrees and Lily asks if he can draw for her. With a smiling face, Eunice agrees and calls it easy. He uses his power and begins to generate bubbles of water. Jir remains in shock. I wanted to know what's going on. Meanwhile, the water falls and Eunice controls it with her power. Jir asks Eunice what this is, and Eunice, next to him, smiles and answers that it's an insignificant spell. He explains to Jir that he generated water to fill the depressions on the door surface. After that, he pressed him against the ground, making sure that the shape remains unchanged while they rotate the page of the book. Lily advances as the magic circle appears clearly in front of them. Eunice looks at the circle, confused, and asks Lily what kind of magic circle it is. Jir just gets there, confused in his prime. Like he doesn't know what they're talking about. However, Eunice wants to know if Lily knows that, considering the coincidence that brought them here. Lily denies it, saying she's not sure it's a coincidence. But she never thought it would be so clear. An apocryphal magic circle and an apocryphal beast. Eunice thinks about it, and Lily, with a serious face, reveals that it looks like this maze was probably built by someone connected to the fallen king. The Rasti region has separate scriptures known as apocrypha, distinct from the canonical scriptures. It's not for moral teachings or narrative stories. Instead, it details the ancient history of the fallen king, the great enemy for the purpose of destroying God and the world, and the intense battle with God's apostle, Rasti. Returning to the story, Eunice plays with Lily and Jir about her terrible sense of direction. Jir, angry, warns Eunice not to wander on his own, to which Eunice replies with laughter, declaring himself part of the group. Eunice highlights how Lily and Jir went in the wrong direction in the last 4.5 months, but still managed to defeat several bosses. Lily wonders if that makes them apocryphal animals. Meanwhile, Jir, looking clueless, hears how Eunice explains that these beasts were used by the fallen king. During their battle with Rasti, some theories suggest that these creatures were actually part of the fallen king. Eunice adds that these beasts were so formidable that it took an entire army to defeat only one, and some larger beasts could rival an entire country in power. Jir, with a slightly disappointed expression, admits it makes sense while Lily shoots him with an angry look. Lily provokes Jir, asking if he thinks it's all a little over the top. Jir, he seems confused, clarifies that he's not saying it's a lie, but he doesn't seem entirely convinced. Lily plays with Jir's cheeks and reveals that the monster he killed is called a nightmare and class it as a minor beast. Jir, shocked, wonders if what he defeated was really a minor beast, and asks Lily to explain what apocryphal beasts are. Lily shares that she thought these creatures were destroyed by the apostle Rasti a long time ago. Jir asks if this means that the rumors are true and whether there are surviving beasts or whether the fallen king created the maze. Eunice says they're getting close to the truth, and at least there's a few tracks here. The magic circle engraved on the door is also mentioned in the apocryphal. Questions Lily Jir if he recognizes the magic circle, mentioning it as a sacred magic she has seen a few times before. She believes it is a magical circle that Rasti used, recorded only in the first 7 original copies of the apocryphal. Eunice, intrigued, asks Lily if she does not refer to Rasti as an apostle, to which Lily confirms and explains her discomfort with that title. Lily notes that the magic circle is not exactly the same, emphasizing that it is not a normal protective spell. She clarifies that this not only prevents outsiders from entering, but also prevents what is inside from leaving. Jir asks if it's a Rasti spell, wouldn't it be better not to break it? Eunice answers that it is not necessarily the case, as there must be a key to breaking the spell. Lily agrees with that perspective, and Jir contemplates the idea of a key in her mind. Eunice shares that Rasti's identity is uncertain, questioning if she was a person. He mentions that someone like her should have been able to build a perfect magic circle. Eunice explains that the magic circle is complex, but was designed to allow it to be broken by a sacred magic user of a certain level and a magical analyst. It's a spell to break. Jir wonders what it means, and Eunice ponders whether this labyrinth is really connected to the fallen king. He explains that it has become a control point accessible to Rasti herself or another holy user of magic, implying that it excludes those who are not loyal to the fallen king. Jir and Lily look at him curiously, and Eunice confesses that she doesn't know exactly the implication. Disappointed, Jir declares she goes to bed, and Lily laughs, appreciating it as an archery joke. She agrees with Eunice that they don't have enough leads for now. Eunice holds Jir, suggesting they may not have all the information yet. Eunice asks Jir if he has any knowledge as an adventurer. He questions whether Jir researched something about the maze before entering, to which Jir, looking a little confused, answers that he knows nothing. Eunice laughs and asks if Jir studied the layout. Angry, Jir emphasizes that he is not and was never an adventurer. He was just an outsider. The most he's heard about the maze is how strong the monsters inside are. Eunice says it looks like Jir hasn't even registered as an adventurer yet. This revelation enrages Jir, thinking of how Godok is a cheater. Eunice adds that he entered such a restricted area. Jir will probably be arrested and fined the moment he leaves. Jir sits there in danger, and Lily, smiling, comments on how sorry she is for Jir the more she learns about him. Eunice, contemplating the situation, agrees, and Jir frustratedly notes that they talked so much about it. Lily suggests that it seems that Godok was too prepared for this and had planned something for Jir from the beginning. Eunice contemplates it, and Lily asks Jir if he has any ideas. Angrily, Jir replies that he knows nothing that would make Godok lie to him. Eunice clearly states that he has trouble believing that Jir is an unhappy idiot. Jir responds in anger, suggesting it would be better if Eunice didn't think so. Eunice expresses her thoughts, saying that someone could argue Lily and he was thrown here on purpose, but Jir, being the greatest swordsman of a time, is very important to get involved in this matter by accident. Jir, with a frustrated face, mentions that he is not as strong as he has never beaten his master. Eunice praises Jir, recognizing him as the strongest to defeat the apocryphal beast alone, even without fighting with full force for not wearing his glasses. Jir feels ashamed and tells Eunice not to mention it. In his thoughts, Jir reflects on it and begins to feel proud of its strength. Suddenly, Lily hits her finger, warning that pride is the enemy. Jir feels pain, screams, and questions if joining him is the last trend. Eunice suggests stopping teasing for now, and proposes that all three pass through the door. Jir and Lily express shock as Eunice proposes to come back through the door. Jir, in his thoughts, considers it lame to go back after reaching so far to conquer the labyrinth. Despite her initial resistance, Jir agrees with a smile, but Lily does not seem satisfied. She questions the delay and cares about their safety. Eunice reassures her, mentioning that he informed Arlene in advance about the possibility of a delayed return. Eunice suggests that instead of going to the surface, it may be faster to reach the deepest floor and then use mana from there for teleportation. Jir wonders if teleporting into the entrance is possible, and Eunice confirms it. Lily agrees, raising her hand, and Eunice, with a smile, comments on the suspicious nature of the labyrinth. Eunice reveals that 3 saints asked him to investigate the inside of the labyrinth when he had free time. He emphasizes the uncertainty of the effort and time needed to reach that depth again, suggesting that his current collective force is a unique opportunity. Jir proposes to make a deal with himself, expressing that he and Lily came here alone. Lily agrees, and Eunice, with a big smile, declares her intention to join them, making them an invincible trio. Eunice mentions sinister predictions of the Magic Federation and the discovery of apocryphal and magical beasts, adding that something significant seems imminent. He looks up at the roof and asks Jir and Lily to help him face the challenges ahead. Happy Lily takes the hands of Eunice and expresses her gratitude for her timely arrival, eager to work together. Jir, also smiling, thanks, recognizing that Eunice saved him from wandering aimlessly with Lily. To decide their way, they decide to play rock, paper, scissors. However, Jir points out that he is at a disadvantage because he cannot see what others choose. Lily suggests that he touches their hands to follow their choices, leading to a playful discussion about who will decide and how. In frustration, Jir and Eunice declare that they are incredibly useless. Eventually, Jir suggests that everyone goes in different directions, and then gather in the same place. Lily and Eunice are amazed at Jir's suggestion, but Jir proposes a race. Whoever comes back first becomes your guide. Eunice finds the idea exciting, and the trio leaves in different directions. Surprisingly, Eunice claims first place, returning in 3 hours and 56 minutes, followed by Jir second in 5 hours and 12 minutes. Lily arrives last after 8 hours and 38 minutes. Eunice and Jir express disbelief that Lily has returned, and she admits her joy of finally coming back. Eunice, also emotional, contemplates the human condition, wondering if there could be anyone more useless than him. Jir, relieved that everyone will return safely, expresses his happiness. The next day, opinions about Jir are divided, with accusations that he is cautious and without appeal. However, the door blocking its path opens the next day, issuing a solemn sound, revealing the way to the deepest level. Jir, while you look at the roof, you wonder if he really needs to be at this party. Lily and Eunice look at him with confusion. It's been a month since this trio is together, and after Eunice's arrival, their adventure has really improved. At first, they acted meek, as Jir looked after the monsters, and Eunice just followed until he got used to things. But soon, Eunice gets the hang of things, and her party becomes one of the strongest of all. In the present time, Eunice with this magic reigns beneath a scale of light, and all the monsters die in this rain in a second. With a sad face, Jir shows gratitude for Eunice's magic because they haven't found a single monster lately. However, he makes a crying face, saying he feels really useless. Lily, in an attempt to make him feel better, you say that it doesn't seem like the barrier to her sanctuary is necessary that much. Nobody else gets hurt. In addition, Eunice can create something similar. She points out that both use light, which means they meet the same criteria. Jir also starts crying, saying that now that she mentions it, her secret sword technique has a name associated with the moon, and the moon and stars are closely related. Eunice asks him not to say something so sad, or he'll start crying too. He mocks him and then starts to laugh, but with a smile, he apologizes and informs him that he was feeling a little left out. Jir tells Eunice that he may be the type to easily succumb to loneliness. Eunice reports that it was inevitable, and he is eager to meet them from the bottom of his heart. He looks up and says it's the first time he's been hanging out with two people his age. He laughs loudly and says deep down that is happy to barely bear it, and it's like being on a field trip. Lily comments on Eunice, saying he's so cute, and Eunice asks if they've ever been on a tour. They both say they have, and Eunice said she entered the Grand Library when she was very young. Eunice reports that he never had a chance to do things like that, and Jir wonders if this is the kind of place they need to get in when they're young. Eunice says it's not like that. In fact, in his case, he was able to enter because his master had close ties to the Grand Inn Library, and it's very rare for someone that age to do it in the heart of a place like this. Lily, with emotion, confirms this is Eunice's first trip. Eunice agrees, and both begin to walk enthusiastically. Jir, with a disappointed face, tells them not to let their guard down, thinking to themselves that they have tripled their fighting powers ever since. However, as it is the most difficult maze, they should not let their guard down. Eunice and Lily agree, but Eunice says the three are the best in their fields, and has not even being optimistic when he says their party is the strongest. He reports that if they can't get through this maze, then mankind has not yet reached the height of their abilities. He still says their current state is natural, and it would be scarier if the three of them were holding on. Lily, with a smile, says Eunice is too long. Eunice laughs and says she's a narcissist, and Lily confirms, as they laugh, that the price of their talent is to have ultra-poor sense of direction. Eunice refuses, saying he's not so bad, and Jir, with an annoying face, tells Lily that the ultra is just her. Lily screams, saying she doesn't want to be the only one. However, after that, Eunice, with her magic, burned down, and they began to eat. Eunice, while eating a terrible fish, asks why all Shrank's parties stopped on the third floor. Lily, chewing, looks at him, and Eunice continues, saying that they were practically the best of their respective eras, and he feels that they should have been able to get here at the right time. But Jir swallowed the fish and said the chief of the third floor is very strong. Eunice and Lily look at him with curiosity, and Eunice asks again if she was really so strong. Jir confirms and says he seriously thought he could die. He still says that assuming it was an apocryphal beast, then this had to be the greatest. Eunice asks if it was stronger than the nightmare, and Jir confirms it for sure. Eunice says it's different than you heard, and asks Jir if that was before the transformation. Jir informs them that his first face was as strong as that nightmare, and that's what comes after that, which was really horrible. He has those flashbacks, like he tells them that if he hadn't increased his position by killing that toxic dragon, he definitely would have won. Lily asks if he had this experience at the time, and Jir confirms, saying that he would have actually died without that experience. Jir wonders if she actually went through the same thing, and Lily confirms, saying she had a ton of kids asking her, and they acted like Lily was lying. She reports that in frustration and irritation, she ended up saying it was a lie, and Jir is still confused. Eunice thinks about it and says that despite not being believed, she still explained how it is. Lily calls her name Eunice, and Eunice apologizes, saying he's lost his mind. Eunice adds that he has no definite proof now, so he may be thinking too much. Lily, with a detective humor, comments that's what someone would say is about to die in a detective novel. Jir, with a smile, agrees too. Suddenly, they see the door next door, and Jir angry says it's his turn. They begin to walk towards the last door, leading to the deepest floor of the most difficult maze that would take a total of 10 days to open. They barely know, after 2 days, 2 of these people would lose their lives. On the other hand, Kraha is in shock, looking at her burnt house. Holland shows up with a cigarette in his mouth and a package in his hand. He feels sorry for Kraha and gives her the package. Kraha, thank you, and get the package. Holland asks if she's hurt, and Kraha reports she's not. She mentioned that last night she was doing some administrative work in the party quarters. Holland asks if the knights are investigating, and Kraha informs that no, a sacred knight should take a look at her. Holland wonders if they are related, as he informs Kraha that Godok also disappeared last night. With a shocking look, Kraha looks at Holland's face, and he reports that all the guys gathered and went looking for Godok, but they still haven't found a single trace of him. He advises Kraha to leave this city, and Kraha wonders why he's saying it. Holland explains that there were eyewitness accounts that an archer entered the ruins, and it was the arching of the stars of all people. Originally, his party was only a post, and the post was forcibly elevated due to Godok's magic sword. So, to be honest, he always thought invading Abyss was too much for them to handle. But now, things can get even worse, as he's starting to see that there could be more to history. Kraha wonders what else, and asks about the other members of the party. Holland, after a little silence, says they can't leave. He says since Godok took that magic sword, they've all been subservient to him. He reports with frustration that they all have things they need to protect, and advises Kraha not to become one of them. Holland tells Kraha it's too early for her to suffocate from her own regrets. Suddenly Erlene shows up, saying she orders him to tell her everything. With a smile on his face, Holland reveals that the future plan wasn't always the kind of party it is now, and they used to have fun killing monsters together. He reports that they may not be refined, but they used to prevail with strategy and teamwork. He sees their flashbacks venturing and having fun together, remembering how good the weather was. With the happy memories in his eyes, he says from his mouth it was the best party. Holland, with Arlene and Kraha, goes to a restaurant. While the three of them sit at the table, Holland tells them that a long time ago, Godok wasn't that kind of guy, and he was a good leader. While holding his glass, they had fun when they were at a prank party. He reports that the main members of his current formation united around this time, and they were unable to demonstrate their full power with other groups. Their party was like a rehab center for guys like them. He tells Kraha that Godok had that kind of ability. Kraha then wonders why he stabs one of his allies in the back. Holland, with the cigarette in his mouth, says it's a good question. But he has no doubt picking up that magic sword was the trigger. After that, he completely changed. Kraha asks where he found the magic sword, and Holland says it was in the middle of the floor of a class maze. It is similar to the depths of the ocean called deep depths. Arlene thinks about it and says she read about it in reports, asking if there was a place full of high salinity water. Holland confirms, and Arlene says she can't claim she knows a lot about it, but she wonders if magic swords are found in places like this. The Netherlands refuses it and says that labyrinths are not so special, and usually, if you want to find something like a magic sword, you need to search for prehistoric ruins. He reveals he discovered it was something left by a dead person. Kraha asks with a small shock, left by a dead person, and Holland confirms it. He further reports that in labyrinths like this, if a party is erased or withdraws, they will often leave supplies and other things. However, a magic sword would definitely be his most valuable asset, so there's no way anyone would rule it out when he withdraws. Arlene thinks it must be from a dead person, and Holland confirms it. He still reports that once Godok obtained his magic sword, the only thing holding them, his lack of fighting force, disappeared. They were able to be certified as a Shrank party without problems, but there was always something strange about Godok ever since. He says had known him a long time, but Holland still had people he needed to protect, so he quit the party before anything important could happen. However, after that, one day he came home at night and saw Godok sitting at the table with his children. With a smile, Godok says Holland has a big family and he is looking forward to working with him for years to come. Holland agrees. And while he was blowing his cigarette and looking at the cup of tea, he said he had people he needed to protect. Kraha asks if that's the reason why no one lifted a finger on Godok when Godok did this to Jur. Arlene said no one spoke. Kraha raises his hand and says he knows this is their fault, but asks if Holland is okay with what he's talking about, and asks about his family. Holland tells her the Holy Knights have been home for 2 days. He says if Godok comes near, he doesn't know they'll stand by and watch. He asks Arlene if he's right. Arlene smiles and praises Holland for having sharp eyes, and reporting reinforcements arrived a few days ago. Holland takes a sip and blinks at her, and asks what these recent incidents have to do with them. He asks, why is the church acting? Arlene shares that Holy Knight commanders suspect that the fallen king is related to the situation, and Holland asks confusedly what she's talking about, wondering if this isn't just a fairy tale. He asks what the apocryphal scriptures of thousands of years ago have to do with what is happening now. Kraha asks if the fallen king is really present today. Arlene says she understands what they're saying, but even now she doesn't have a clear answer. But she tells the 3 saints that at the same time, the Magic Federation also had the same kind of feeling. She also explains that among the observers is that famous archive. Holland puts his hand on his face, wondering what's going on. He asks if she means that Godok is also connected to the fallen king somehow. Arlene says that's the assumption for now, and Kraha looks at the cup of coffee. Arlene, hearing, says it's just a hypothesis, but if you look closely at the timeline, she thinks it's likely that the magic sword, which reduces things to nothing, is the fallen king. Kraha suddenly asks them what that noise is like. She feels something, and realizes that the coffee in the cup is also moving. Suddenly they run away, and see an instrumental apocryphal beast. On the other hand, in the maze, Jira cuts the monster in the middle with his sword. Eunice looks at him and says has the useless one now, and Jira smiles, saying that now he understands how he felt before. Ever since they came through the second door, has had the undeniable feeling that these beasts are incredibly strong. The monsters became so formidable that they were not intimidated by Eunice's magic and strong enough to destroy a small village on their own. Ajira questions if it's really a deep maze, and thinks which floor they're on, guessing they're on the 170th floor. He wonders how many floors there are in total, assuming 200 floors. Eunice gives his guess, saying there will be 216 floors. Jira asks why such a stupid number, and Eunice tells him it has 6 cubes. Lily looks at the roof and says she thinks they're almost done. Eunice and Jira look at Lily, and Lily immediately says it's just a hunch, because the saint says she has a hunch. Eunice laughs, saying it's a compelling argument, and Lily runs after Jira angry to punch him. She beats him, saying she feels so much better when she's home. Jira is on the ground and says that maybe that's what the maze experience should be. Lily confirms that adventurers have difficulties, and Eunice says that in this case, it's definitely not the kind of place he'd like to dive into many times, unless has with reliable people like Lily and Jira. Jira, in his brain while he was there, thinks that if he had continued this adventure by following the future plan, he would never have come this far. And he knows they simply wouldn't have the strength to deal with several beasts on the ground. He thinks to himself that it's these 3 who can go so deep into the maze, and he says that maybe there's a point to it after all. Lily suddenly realizes Jira saying something. Jira looks at her and says she's talking to herself. Lily says he talks to himself a lot, and Jira wonders if he really is. Lily comes closer to him and says with a smile he certainly makes. Eunice smiles and says he's so jealous and wishes had joined the adventure earlier. Jira says it's childish to say, but Eunice says it's always been his dream to have friends his age. Lily laughs and says then we'll exchange letters after they leave here, and tell Jira that it's going for him too. Lily blushes a little and questions for sure. Seeing this, Eunice says sadly that they have a cold-blooded person here. Jira says no, it's just that when he gets out of here, he'll travel again, so even if he sends something, it's gonna be hard to turn him in. Lily says if she writes where he's going next, then she can send it to the mail shop in that town, and Jira wonders if that kind of service exists. Lily blinks and says her writing is so cute that it'll make him shiver by surprise. Jira keeps blushing, while Eunice, with tears in her eyes, asks Jira if she will do it for him. Eunice says she'll send Jira 7 letters a week with a cipher so she can enjoy them. Jira, with an angry face, wonders why he has to complicate things so much. Eunice and Lily smile while Jira is there in trouble. After that, all 3 look at the larger gate in front of them. Eunice says if Lily's words are reached, they'll soon pass through the maze. Lily said it took so long that it started to go numb. Eunice and Lily raise their hands and say, let's move on without getting too confident. Jira puts her hand on the door and asks if they're ready. Eunice, with a smile, always says, and Lily, with a punch pose, says anywhere. Jira, in your brain, thinks that compared to that horrible beginning, this adventure isn't so bad. He tells them, right? Jira, with emotion, says opens the sesame and begins to open the gate. Suddenly he sees something, making him totally surprised and shocked. Suddenly, after opening the door, Jira pushes Eunice back, and he sees a great flying monster in front of him who attacks them. Lily, with your magic shield, stop and protect Eunice, but Jira could not defend him, and he gets hit, causing his death. Suddenly a magical event occurs, and Jira feels like her soul is escaping. Time starts to rewind for a second. Within Jira's broken body and consciousness, one thing remains, his soul. There's a stunning light in front of him that looks like it might explode. But Jira manages to reach out as if she held on to that soul, in a position he had imagined countless times before, that he had visualized countless times before. So much happens in this short period. Jira uses her killer technique to attack that monster, and with his secret sword Eris, using your moon dream skill, he can kill the monster. Suddenly he sits, breathing heavily, covering your face with your hand, sweating immensely. He wonders what happened. He said he remembers the moment he entered the chief's office and the boss caught him off guard with just one attack killing him. He wonders how he's alive. He looks at his hand, trembling, while he hears Lily's voice telling Eunice not to move. Eunice is there with blood, and Lily tells him that he really did it, instructing Eunice not to speak while using her magic. And in seconds, Eunice is cured. Eunice smiles and says he thought he was dead. He says he was really dead and informs Jira that it was like he said. Pride leads to pain. Jira asks what the hell happened before, and Eunice explains that time came back in a second. Lily and Jira look at Eunice with total shock, and Lily asks if this is the new magic he mentioned before. Eunice laughs and says she got it right. It was his main factor to be certified as an archer. He says it's a new technique he found at the end of the stars. He looks at the roof, imagining stars, and says he usually has to pay more attention to the alignment of the stars and make a lot of difficult preparation to take it off. But this time, he did it by force. He says he can only rewind a little time, so he's very happy that Jira hit the head of the floor in that only second window he could provide. With a smile, he further says he's happy that their fight didn't prove to be in vain at the end, and says Lily that if she hadn't protected him, he wouldn't be able to recite the whole enchantment. He says that the organs that exploded served as payment for the technique and would not have returned. Jira, sitting there, she laughs when she suddenly realizes the term organs. He wonders what that means, and Eunice, to explain, tells him how this is a cave and he used this spell in a place without star mana. The only thing he could bet on his own life force. With a laugh, he says the consequences were incredible, and its inside burst like a balloon with a resounding burst. Jira is a little scared to hear that, and he says Eunice looks very intense, and suggests he take a nap. Eunice, thank you. Lily for helping him. Saying his feeling refreshed, he mentions that people should call Lily a great saint rather than just a saint. Lily agrees, saying they should say that, as they already have a hero and an archer, and she's the only one without a big name. Lily looks at Jira, saying she can't say that now, not after losing like this. He thinks he was gonna kick the bucket. Actually, yes, but if Eunice wasn't there, he'd be dead. Lily also sits down, seems a little scared, saying she's so discouraged she doesn't want to move anymore. Eunice laughs loudly and says it's getting difficult. Jira, with a straight face, thank you both. Lily and Eunice, with a smile, say his welcome. The trio sits there together, tired on the floor. Eunice asks Jira if from now on, he thinks he can keep hitting the floor chief like he did before. Jira thinks about it for a second and then lowers her head, saying she has no idea. With a sad face, he says he defeated the now with the effects of awakening, and Eunice says he understands what he means. Lily, with a smile, says her post has risen immensely. Jira says that at that moment, he thinks he was able to immediately use the inversion of time due to the effects of awakening right after the experience. 3 times, people like Jira have been through something called experience. No one really put a clear definition on that, but if you are facing life or death situations, or overcoming difficult times, or even investigating the great truths as magicians do, this experience happens. After going through this, people's abilities go off a lot. For a short time, they enter this state called awakening, where they can do crazy things. Jira, for example, turned the entire battle with a powerful attack, and that was probably because of this experience, and it's not just a short-term impulse. Climbing in ranks for a long time helps them grow in a huge way, putting them on a totally different level than before. Of course, if they keep growing the normal way, they can still get so powerful, but thanks to experience, they speed the way there. Whether or not someone has had this experience really shows how good swordsmen and magicians really are. The experience makes the journey to become super powerful much faster. Eunice looks up and Jira says, "Let's go back." As he asks, after having experience, if his abilities increase, but the effects of awakening have already dissipated. Eunice and Lily confirm, and Jira thinks he can think of himself as having the same level of power as his master from the time he fought the toxic dragon. Eunice asks if he is confident that without the effects of awakening, he can find a floor chief. Jira, with a stressed face, says it definitely isn't. In his brain, he thinks when he was split in two by the ray of light. It wasn't because he was being careless, but in a competition of pure strength. He was struck like an insect. The world is a big place, and has still inexperienced. It is because he is aware of this fact that he speaks with his head down, saying that while there is life, there is hope, and it may take them a while to return to the surface. He raises his face and says it's much better than never coming back. Eunice thinks it's a reasonable suggestion, as he would like to do. But he asks Lily if she has anything in mind. He asks if she knows how powerful the boss was. Lily thinks about it and says it was a middle beast. Jiro looks at her in shock, and she says that, in addition, it was below average in terms of combat capability. Listening to this, Jiro feels traumatized since she can't imagine how powerful they are. Lily begins to explain that orchestras are a kind of words and dealing with them is incredibly difficult, because each falls between a lesser and average apocryphal beast in its own right. According to Rasti, they operate in groups, and if their commander is overthrown, victory becomes attainable. Jira and Eunice contemplate this, and Eunice asks if Rasti is really about to come. Lily expresses uncertainty, leading Jira to wonder if it could be a different species. However, Lily asserts her certainty, explaining that apocryphals always have a number written on their bodies, indicating their species, and in this case, it is an orchestra. Jira reflects on Lily's earlier statement, recognizing that she is classified as an apocryphal beast in the middle. However, only in terms of strength does it seem to be a minor beast. Despite trying humility, Jira realizes she overestimated her own strength and succumbed to pathetic pride. He struggles with the perception that there are individuals who never accept defeat and become stronger, but he does not identify with this mentality. Watching Jira lost in thought, Lily wonders if he's feeling depressed. Meanwhile, Jira contemplates whether the beast that killed him was one of the least powerful. Despite his attempt at humility, he recognizes his own foolish overestimation of strength. When Lily looks at Jira, who seems to be lost in thought, she wonders if he is on the verge of tears. However, Jira clarifies that he is not depressed. He suggests that given their potential inability to deal with a larger apocryphal beast, it would be prudent for them to return. Eunice agrees with Jira, and Lily asks if something is bothering Eunice. He agrees and raises a question about the third-floor chief. Specifically, Eunice asks if Jira defeated her personally. Jira confirms that, and details how the ground collapsed because of Godok's magic sword, leading Jira to kill the monster as she fell. Eunice seeks clarification as to whether the head of the third floor fell with Jira and got involved in a fight instead of simply dying after leaving the chief chamber. Jira claims they both fell from the chief's chamber. Eunice asks that the floor chief had a number written on him, leading Jira to write down the number. After that, Eunice seeks Lily's opinion on the matter. Lily examines the number and claims it belongs to one of the minor beasts, but possesses considerable power, even though it surpasses that of the nightmare. Eunice adds that, in essence, the beast Jira defeated was not the head of the third floor. This revelation leaves Jira in complete shock, while he struggles with the implications. However, the deeper you venture into the maze, the more powerful you become the head of the floor. There are no exceptions to this rule, and depending on your abilities, the difficulty of defeating them can float. This also implies that the mana contained in their bodies increases with each descending floor. Eunice lifts her finger and observes that Jira encounters such a formidable opponent on the third floor is peculiar, marking only the beginning of bizarre occurrences. He mentions the typical rule that walkers cannot leave their designated rooms. Although he acknowledges that he does not fully understand the functioning, Eunice emphasizes that it is a fundamental feature of the labyrinth, and even the apocryphal beasts of the middle follow this rule. Eunice points out that, in fact, the orchestra did not attack until Jira opened the door, raising the question of how a weaker apocryphal beast managed to leave the chief's chamber and transform upon finding them. Eunice proposes the simplest hypothesis. The head of the third floor was an apocryphal beast freed from the maze rule. Jira reacts with shock, and Eunice, gesturing with her finger, suggests that the labyrinth's bonds are weakening. Jira asks if this means that the beasts may not be able to keep their mana out of the maze, for which Eunice admits that she has no idea. He shares the historical context, explaining the apocryphal era when monsters wandered outside the mazes and were formidable neighbors of humanity. Before their births, Jira, visibly emphasized, questions whether this was possible today, considering that it happened so long ago. Eunice transmits that, in the worst case, this could happen, as they currently face an apocryphal beast. He mentions the belief that the apocryphal era could be reenacted, leaving Jira unable to understand the situation. Jira questions whether Eunice might be thinking too much, suggesting that perhaps the third floor chief was a unique case. Turning to Lily for clarifications, he is received with a moment of silence before she reveals that some pages of the apocryphal were lost, leaving Jira even more amazed. Lily explains that there was a fire in the library 700 years ago, causing part of the original apocryphal and the 7 books of the first manuscript to be destroyed, almost as if by design, from the second manuscript. Due to the loss of information, it is challenging to determine what is true. Lily reflects on her childhood curiosity. Where would she think of questions how the fallen king was annihilated and how did Rasti fight him? Now, with one hand on her lips, she reveals the truth. Rasti did not kill the fallen king, but sealed him in this place. Jiro reacts with total shock, while Eunice smiles, stating that this aligns with her thoughts. Eunice looks at the maze and says it's not a natural occurrence. It was formed from the structure that Rasti created, with the mana spill of the fallen king sealed inside, becoming a pseudo-labyrinth. Lily speculates that information about this place may have been contained in the lost pages that were burned in the fire, or intentionally destroyed. Jira questions whether this implies that the bonds are weakening and the monsters are trying to escape. However, Lily discards this notion, stating that it's probably much more serious, revealing that the labyrinth seal is about to break. In shock, Jira asks about the consequences if the seal breaks. Eunice ponders the situation and says it won't end like this. The apocryphal beasts linked to the labyrinthic structure would be released into the surface world. He emphasizes that they would be helplessly destroyed if this happened. Lily adds that it's not just about the liberation of the apocryphal beasts. If the fallen king wakes up, the world will be flooded with mana, leading to the destruction of civilization, similar to what happened in prehistoric times. Jira's face reflects terror as he sits, exclaiming there's more reason for them to come back. With his eyes open and a shocked expression, he emphasizes that the three cannot keep information vital to themselves. Jira suggests they need to find a way out of the maze and let everyone know what they've learned. He insists that their strength does not make them the best, urging them to swallow their pride and abandon the idea of dealing with everything on their own. Eunice and Lily turn their attention to Jira, her look up, as they notice the total solar eclipse imminent. Eunice explains that it is the day that mana is in its densest, speculating that the seal can break during that moment, or someone on the surface can make a move first. Jira, curious, questions the term surface, and Eunice suggests that the cathedral in the city may be a drop keeping the seal from above. Jira, your face reflecting shock, asks if anyone is planning to destroy the cathedral. Lily suggests that it could be someone dedicated to the fallen king, preemptively eliminating a powerful swordsman who came close to the city. Jira seems serious and wonders if it's Godok. Eunice confidently states that it seems that Godok's plan didn't work out by squeezing his fist and saying it's time for them to do something. Lily agrees, but Jira's quiet, trying to figure out what's going on. Eunice counts. Jira that a solar eclipse is coming in 3 days at noon. Even if they are not sure how many floors remain in the maze, Eunice emphasizes that if they do not seal the fallen king before the eclipse, they will fail. Jira is there in shock, trying to understand the gravity of the situation. Lily addresses Jira, stating that the situation has nothing to do with him. She explains that she and Eunice have come on a mission, and if any of them leave, they cannot seal the fallen king. She claims that Jira is not necessary, leaving him with a feeling of sadness. Moving forward, there is no promise to remain alive, a risky fact that was true even before. But now things get even more dangerous. Finding bigger, scary creatures is no longer a struggle for life, means certain death. Lily bows her head and expresses gratitude to Jira for leading them here. She says with a smile that he did enough. Sitting there, Jira reflects on her journey through the maze. Facing his own weakness, unable to fight properly without his glasses, he realizes he can lose his life or not protect his friends. Eunice nearby recognizes the limited time before the solar eclipse and understands that Jira has no obligation to fight. However, he seriously asks Jira to risk her life to save the world and take them to the deepest level of the maze. Jira, think of the great responsibility has taken, and realizes he's not good at much except swinging his sword, but still is happy about it. Lily asks if he's sure about helping them, and Jira happily raises his hand, saying that without someone guiding him, he could never come out of the maze to see the sky again. Lily thanks you. While holding one of his hands, Eunice held the other. Jira remembers that he came to the maze to conquer him first. Then the three continued their journey. Although they were not as happy as before, there was still a little hope in their steps. One of them asks where they should go, and Jira answers that, based on their instinct, they should go this way. Kraha, stopped in shock while looking at the monster, remembers hearing that name countless times in her childhood and reading them in the scriptures. A servant of the fallen king, the instrumental apocryphal beast. Suddenly, looking at Arlene, Kraha asks if the fallen king has risen. Arlene, in haste, rejects the question and instructs them to quickly take positions in the cathedral. He emphasizes that if they do not act, the city will be left as burnt land. Halland advises Kraha to go with Arlene, promising to join them after meeting his family. And though I lose Jira in the maze, Kraha decides to help instead of just running away. She instructs Arlene to go ahead, and when she hears a child's cry for help, she runs towards the source. Kraha rescues the child from a wooden log, reflecting on your new ability to help others. She reaches out to the girl, who thankfully accepts. Kraha smiles, but your joy is short, like big spiders suddenly appear. Shocked, she wonders if they're from the maze. Initially considering the option to fight, Kraha realizes that it is impossible for her. The only choice now is to run, just in time. A group of adventurers is enough to protect her. Archers shoot arrows at spiders, coming to Kraha's aid at the right time. Everyone seems surprised to see Kraha. Suddenly, Halland shows up and asks how everyone is. He said he already took Kraha to the cathedral. Out of nowhere, one of the adventurers takes Halland and asks why Kraha is still there. Halland explains that he gave her a chance to leave, but she decided to stay. For him, Kraha reminds him of how they used to be, without much power or experience, but determined to continue. With a smile and memories in his eyes, he talks about Kraha as someone who faced rejection, but he kept trying different things, showing strong persistence. He speaks directly to Kraha, saying he believes she will become a great adventurer someday. The angry adventurer declares that Kraha should not be corrupted as they were, before she becomes so entangled that she can no longer escape, before she becomes a miserable adventurer like them. Kraha finally speaks, stating with a strong tone that she will not escape. The adventurer seems disappointed, while Halland smiles. Kraha asks if it does not apply to them, otherwise they would not be fully armed, and asks if they plan to fight. The adventurer answers affirmatively, saying they have to fight, because if they don't, who will? He emphasizes the importance of protecting the family that lives in the city. Halland observes the morale of all, and reveals to Kraha that, because they wanted to help the next generation, as they found their foot in times of need, they decided to name their guild future plan. He admits they may have lost all their pride and tells Kraha not to die. Kraha, after saying goodbye to the girl with a smile, sits there looking at what is happening everywhere with a face without expression. During that time, when adventurers are making a move, Godok sits inside the dark cave alone with his magic sword in his hand, ready to act. The adventurers continue to fight along with archers, killing monsters and trying to save the city. Kraha helps normal people to shelter in the cathedral, all fighting to save the city. Suddenly, a flash appears, and she thinks a bomb can delay only one monster. But that's more than enough. The adventurers shout that the 5th Street is clear and inform that support is needed on the east side. Kra stand there. Suddenly you see the flying monster. She screams at Halland to take care of the bird. Halland realizes the bird's feathers are as hard as steel, and suddenly, when he was going to fall from such a high place, Kra can catch him and save him from the damage he could have done. Halland sits there with his hand on his head, and Kraha asks if he's okay. Halland thanks for saving him and tells Kraha to prepare, because they're looking death in the face. The bird looks at them with marked eyes and big sharp teeth. Halland says it looks like they finally got his attention, and suddenly he screams Halland's name. Halland looks at them, and these are some Archimas that, using their power, bind the monster. Kraha, happily, says they took it, but Halland shouts that it's too early to celebrate. Halland shouts at the archers to shoot the monster with arrows so that his mobility is reduced and does not give him time. All archers start shooting arrows at him, and the bird covers itself completely without any movement. Kraha realizes the strategy to fly is to attack from all sides, targeting the wing. Halland runs near the bird to shoot his arrow. No matter how robust those feathers are, if you need an arrow at close range, it will end. But suddenly, Kraha realizes the fire beginning to shine inside the monster's mouth, while her eyes remain wide open. She realizes it's not right. In the instruments there are dragons that can spit fire. She screams, telling Halland shall spit fire. Immediately Kraha runs to save Halland, coming in front of him to protect him from fire. She screams for Halland to move, as she burns herself in the process. She remembers the time Jir told her about the letters, emphasizing that as useless as she thinks her letters are, there is always a situation where she can use them in a team battle. Covered in flames, she screams as the fire burns her repeatedly, reflecting on the childhood dreams she had while reading about such adventures. Halland, with his mighty bow, faces the monster-breathing fire. He employs his ability, the King of the Wind, and destroys the monster completely. He looks at Kra, asking if she's still alive. With a low voice, Kra responds, saying yes. She's standing there, her body burned. Halland smiles at her and asks her not to move. The adventurer tells him that he will receive a healing wizard from the cathedral to come and heal them. Halland looks at Kraha with a proud face and says he's doing a great job. Without it, he would have killed the beast. Kraha laughs at pain like Halland said they'll take care of the rest and ask her to rest there. Kraha closes her eyes, her trembling voice showing gratitude to Halland. However, Halland suddenly sees many bats coming towards him, leaving him in shock. The arcade also looks to the sky, remaining in total disbelief. Unable to trust his eyes, he shouts that they could barely handle it and says Halland to name himself. He instructs you to evacuate everyone in the cathedral. How hell buy some time? Halland looks at him in shock, and another man talks, suggesting they forget about the city and claim that the whole country is screwed. He screams at Halland to leave immediately. Kraha, with his trembling voice, asks Halland to go, and he cries because of the terrible situation. Without a choice, he runs to evacuate everyone in the cathedral. The adventurer shouts, urging anyone with strength to draw attention, even for a few seconds. Suddenly, Halland's eyes widen as he sees another creature, stronger and larger than before, coming towards them. In his mind, he thinks the last one was nothing compared to this one. He looks at the beast throwing a megaball of fire at them, realizing that he may not arrive in time. Kraha, with her eyes half open, looks at the monster with defeat in her eyes. However, suddenly a miracle happens, and everyone sees when a boy fights the monster with a sword, finally killing the beast with a single attack. Kraha, with her eyes half open before she faints, looks at the boy killing the monster and walking. She realizes her joy and loses consciousness. On the other hand, Eunice claps with a smile, him saying it looks like you're just in time. He mentions the total solar eclipse marked for dawn, and raise your hand to the stars. Eunice asks how about showing everyone her true power, wins through many trials and tribulations like the bow of the stars. He uses his ability, causing a meteor shower on the monsters. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lily raises her hand, informing Arlene that she's back. Arlene runs towards her, realizing as the saint. Lily apologizes for the delay and Arlene asks where she was. Lily urges Arlene to leave the discussion and lecture for later, going to the back room. Lily informs Arlene about the current state of the city, revealing many casualties and extensive damage. She mentions that 3 routes leading to the cathedral were safe, but due to the great outbreak of wild birds, she leaves everything to Arlene, admitting that she is not good at these things. Lily looks up, expressing her intention to fix the situation. Inside the cathedral, she is among the families, reassuring them not to worry. Lily uses her magic and suddenly, the cathedral begins to shine as she sits on her knees, praying to use her magic. She declares that the number of people injured will now be reduced to 0. A big flash occurs, healing everyone in town. Kraha wakes up, meeting perfectly well with his missing wounds. Likewise, Halland and all the other adventurers also realize that they are cured. Halland and Kraha look at Jur as he apologizes, and with a smile he mentions that is lost. Jur reflects on the challenge of checking each passage without blinking sleep or even a break, hunting every monster in sight for 3 days continuously. He breathes deeply and screams, asking Kraha where she is. Kraha, you seem disappointed, look at him from behind and tell him she's here. Jur approaches her, trying to recognize her face, while Kraha wonders if something is wrong. Jur, seeing Halland, remembers his face and asks Kraha what's going on. In a whisper, Eunice informed him that she is the only one on their side. Kraha explains that the entire city was evacuated to the cathedral. When the beasts attacked, they secured escape routes and helped those who could not escape in time. However, apocryphal animals appeared, and without the timely arrival of Jur, they would be in great danger. Jur asks about his knowledge and if they found the leader. Kraha, still in shock with the leader, says he knows nothing. Jur then asks Kraha to take him to the cathedral, and she confirms. Meanwhile, Halland, behind them, asks what to do. Jur, feeling angry, remains silent. Halland offers help, but Kraha reassures Jur that none of them will escape. Jur counts. Halland doesn't need help and instructs him to prioritize people. Counting on him, Halland recognizes and will help people while Kraha points out the cathedral. Fighting to see clearly because of your weak vision. Jur is delivered his glasses by Kraha, who reveals that she kept them safe. Jur, raising the glasses happily, screams that he can see and point out several things. He gives Kraha his jacket, thinking it might be cold. Excitedly, he runs towards the cathedral, but Kraha corrects his direction. Lily goes down the cathedral stairs, realizing that Jur changed his face. Jur proudly attributes it to wearing glasses, and Lily comments on how well they look on him. She shares the good news that Eunice and she have exhausted themselves in sealing spells, leaving them with the little mana. Jur questions how good news is just as steps approach them. Lily reveals that it means that Jur will face the leader. Kraha wonders if this is the leader Jur mentioned, the one with the apocryphal magic equipment. Jur confirms, and Lily explains that Godok's sword is the weaponry of the fallen king, dominating his heart and mind with deep hatred, all for the rebirth of the fallen king. Jur shouts at Godok and tells him that the abyss was again sealed by a saint and an archer. Even if he destroys the cathedral, the fallen king will not be revived. Godok screams in a tremendous voice, telling them to run away as they cannot defeat Vanish. Jur wonders if he's still conscious, thinking he's a Shrank adventurer for sure. Godok says in a trembling voice that a human cannot expect to defeat the magic sword. Jur drops his sword, asking if that's why Godok called him. Jur says Godok knew he couldn't win alone, and knew that the fallen king would be revived if he didn't do something. Armed with the little power of will and reason he had left, he sent Jur into the maze to seal again. Godok keeps saying it's impossible even for Jur. However, Jur, swinging his swords with a smile, says he's still inexperienced. But you will prove with the sword that the path he chose was the best. He declares Swordsman Jur is back. Jur advances to strike, understanding that 50% of the time, the result of a struggle depends on the first blow. He attacks Godok, who has become a beast. But Godok skillfully blocks the attack, leaving Jur slightly shocked. Taking the opportunity, Godok lifts Jur and drives him away. Although it's been played dead, Jur defends himself successfully and prepares for another attack. He immediately jumps to attack Jur, believing that the second way is to kill him at once. Using his 8th sword skill, he lets out a rift ray, causing a massive attack. However, after the attack, he testified that it was not enough to kill Godok. Godok unleashes the magic sword, and somehow Jir manages to defend himself against it. The whole floor breaks into pieces, and Jir, holding his sword from the ground, reflects that the only reason he survived, it was because Godok was suppressing that power. He realizes all this was caused by the magic sword. Examining the form of the monster Godok turned into, Jir thinks to himself that it all began with the sword, which invaded the soul of the warrior and eliminated obstacles in his path. Suddenly, Godok jumps on Jir to attack, but with rapid reflexes, Jir can defend himself against the attack. Godok takes another blow on Jir, breaking the ground, and Jir defends him with a sword. Jir tells himself that once again he feels anger, madness. It's a different impulse than anything he's ever experienced before. He looks at Godok, that in his thoughts, acknowledges for the first time since the magic sword disappeared that he is afraid of a lone swordsman. Jir also feels an old feeling, realizing that unlike experiences and awakening, this feeling is understanding. With determination, he runs toward Godok to deliver an attack, feeling his soul moving faster, and the consciousness of his much increased body. Jumping and attacking Godok, Jir believes that this is how a sword should really be wielded. As you approach Godok, the latter strikes with his magic sword, but the speed of the Jir allows him to see and successfully defend against her. Godok takes Jir. But Jir takes advantage of the situation, recognizing that he could not have reached that level alone. It reflects that anyone is missing, or giving up anything would have prevented him from exceeding his limits. Free from Godok's hands, Jir cuts off the hand of the beast, expressing gratitude in his mind for the support of all. He drops his sword from his back to attack Godok, using his secret sword art, the Moon Dream. In a single attack, he cuts off Godok's body, achieving victory and saving the entire country from the fallen king. After defeating Godok, Jir finally came out of the dungeon and saw his friends waiting for him. He wanted to know if they were worried about him. Together, everyone went to Lily's house, and as soon as he lay down, exhaustion took over, and he fell into a deep sleep. Several days later, Lily appeared and tried to wake Jir by touching pots together. He slowly opened his eyes, still half asleep, but gradually came to himself. Once he woke up, he got ready. After a while, Lily walked into his room and said she thought it best to wake him up early, since he was leaving that day. Jir smiled and thanked. When he asked for a handshake, she ran to make breakfast. He took a deep breath, thinking how nice it was to see Lily wearing an apron. In his mind, he tried to ward off thinking because of the tense atmosphere, but he couldn't help feeling frustrated with who he said she was an 80-year-old married woman. It was his own thoughts. He would definitely straighten them out. Once again, it was your own thoughts. Suddenly Jir saw Eunice in front of him. He greeted him happily, saying that it has been a while since they met in the morning. They talked for a while, and then went to a restaurant for breakfast. When they arrived, Lily waved at them, saying the food was ready. After calling them, she immediately began to eat without waiting for them. Seeing this, Jir and Eunice laughed and walked toward the table. While they were eating, Lily mentioned to Eunice that this would be her last meal together since Jir was leaving. Eunice waved at confirmation. Then Lily suddenly remembered that Arlie had offered Jir a wagon, but Jir refused, saying he didn't have to. Eunice asked if Jir was planning to leave right after breakfast. Jir confirmed and added that he would stop at the hospital for a while, wondering if the patients had regained consciousness. Taking advantage of her food, Lily assured him they had it. Jir smiled, took a sip of his tea, and he said that he would soon say goodbye to them, since he had a promise that it was taking too long. Lily reminded them to write letters after going their separate ways as they had promised before. She asked them to send a letter as soon as they settled down. Laughing, Lily joked that her handwriting was super cute. Eunice, excited, said it would come with a secret code for her letters, while Jir, with a straight face, admitted that her letters would not be very exciting. Eunice, however, told him to make them interesting because he would be looking forward to them. After finishing breakfast, Jir got up, said goodbye, and was about to leave, when Lily asked how about a goodbye kiss. It made him completely confused. So to his surprise, they pulled their puppets and made them give him playful kisses on the cheek, disappointing him. Lily asked if he wanted to participate. Without much enthusiasm, Jir also used the doll to give them playful kisses, just to realize that it was more fun than he expected. Finally, they held each other's hands and promised to meet again one day. After leaving the restaurant, Jir went to the hospital. He asked the nurse for the room number and went there. When he knocked on the door, he saw Godak resting in bed with his friends gathered around him. Before anyone spoke, Jir said not to apologize. When Godak tried to get out of bed, Jir said not to try too hard. He heard that Godak's muscles and bones were still damaged by the effects of apocryphal magic equipment, so he should concentrate on resting. With a disappointed look, Godak apologized, saying he hoped to recover in time to see Jir go. But since Jir was here, it must mean had already decided to leave. Jir confirmed that he had come for one last visit. Godak admitted that no thanks or apology would be enough. With his own hands, he lured Jir into a trap, stabbed him in the back, and left him to die in the maze. However, despite all this, Jir and his companions had still managed to overcome everything and resolve the situation. Godak kept saying they saved the world, and there's no way anyone like him could express his gratitude or repentance. But gathering his courage, he added that if there was any way that Jir wanted him to repay him, he would, even if it cost him his life. Jir, however, refused. He said he didn't care about any of that. He admitted that when Godak almost killed him, he had thought about getting even and beating him up, but in the end, he had no choice but to move on. Godak sighed sadly and agreed, saying that if he had taken a false step, things could have been very different. In the days following the incident, some members of Godak's party, including some who were present there, came to visit him. They repeatedly apologized for their actions, saying they were ashamed of their cowardice and the crimes they had committed. They believed they could no longer call themselves adventurers. However, Jir said he didn't care about any of it. He remembered he hadn't dragged anyone into this situation. Godak was shocked to hear that, realizing how calm Jir was. Jir explained that he was counting on everyone, and each person did what he was capable of. The twists, strengths, and weaknesses led them to where they were now. It's up to each of them to decide how they felt about it. He smiled and said that, despite everything, he thought it was a good thing they took that confused path. Hearing this, Godak felt guilty, unable to believe how kind Jir was. Jir then thanked for everything, saying that he had a chance to help save the world because of his efforts. After that, he said goodbye and left the hospital. When Jir finally arrived in his village, he was surprised to hear people calling him a hero. Confused about what was going on, he looked around. He greeted a woman named Arlenet, who served under Lily. She told him that since he had taken such good care of their saint, they felt it was only right to address him with a formal title as a sign of gratitude. Jir thought she seemed like a nice person. Arlenet asked if I could help you with something. He asked if she knew where Kraha was. Hearing this, she immediately screamed, asking if anyone knew where Kraha was, since Sir Jir had business with her. A woman nearby said Kraha would be back soon. With a happy nod, Arlenet excitedly told Jir that he had done his part and that he would now return to his work. Jir sat there strangely, feeling ashamed for all the attention. So he noticed Holland. They closed their eyes. Jir was surprised to see you in different clothes. Holland, realizing Jir's expression, confirmed that he was leaving, so he asked if Jir had ever visited Godak. Jir nodded, saying that he had seen him before and that Godak had kept saying that he could never thank him enough. Jir added with a sigh that he had heard it at least 100 times. Changing the subject, he asked Holland about his exploration. Holland smiled and said it was going well. Since the fallen king was resected, the leaking sister was beginning to disappear. That made progress much easier. However, he admitted that the interior was still extremely complex, so they couldn't just run down the deeper floors. Jir advised him to be more careful as he walked through the door he had reported. There may still be a weak enemy left behind. Holland smiled and assured him that he would be cautious when joining the first research team. He waved with a smile, agreeing that it was always better to have a strong group when dealing with apocryphal beasts. They kept talking until Kraha found out Jur was there. As soon as he heard, he ran to find him. He noticed she seemed nervous and asked about it. She admitted it was the first time she had seen him since he became a great hero. But he reminded her of the promise he had made to her, asking if she had forgotten. Kraha was shocked to remember. However, she hesitated and said she didn't feel she deserved it. With a sad expression, she explained that she had done nothing alone. If it weren't for Holland, her crew, Arlenate, and everyone else, she wouldn't have gotten anything. He said the same could be said of him. Someone had to give him a good push too. He added that he had only done what was within his ability. Hearing his words, Kraha suddenly began to cry. Jur gave her a warm smile and told her that from now on he would keep doing what he could. During the battles to subdue and investigate the apocryphal equipment and beast that escaped the seal, as well as the difficult times that might come, he would trust the warriors who could survive by his side. So, like he said, it was nice to ask for help when needed, so he reached out and asked if she would help him. He admitted with a small smile that he had a terrible sense of direction and would not be able to make much progress alone. Kra looked at him with tears running down his face. She always dreamed of becoming adventurous, so Jur made an offer. If she helped you on your journey, he would teach you the sword in return. She looked at his hand, remembering how, when she was younger, she always doubted whether she was worthy of such an opportunity. But now she has made her decision. She took his hand, smiling while trying to stop the tears. So, with determination in her voice, she said she'd love to help, swearing never to give up. 3 years ago, Jur met a girl who noticed he hadn't eaten anything except dirt for 3 days. At the time, he was holding a sword, and she thought it would be dangerous for someone like him to be wandering around town while he could barely stand. Thinking it'd be better to take him, she said not to cause trouble. Hearing her kind words, Jur felt tears gushing in her eyes, touched by her generosity. He ordered food and she invited him in. Thank you, he thanked and introduced himself as Jur, the Dragon Slayer. Trying to impress her, he overdid her skills, bragging that if she needed his help, she'd just have to ask. At the time, Jur was sitting in a carriage, writing a letter to his friends, Lily and Eunice. He told them he was now in the eastern country, and had come to see an oculist, but unfortunately, the oculist had left business permanently, so he asked how they were and if they had accepted any students. Then he wrote a personal answer to Lily explaining that the way he spoke and the way he wrote it were just different. In his response to Eunice, he admitted that the secret code in Eunice's letter was very difficult for him. Even after a whole week, he hadn't figured it out yet. After finishing his letters, he took a moment to read those he had received from them. As he read, a smile appeared on his face, and he kindly closed the letters, feeling happy. However, after that, his chariot stopped. Kra reported. Jur there was a monster ahead, so the road was temporarily closed. Jur asked if they could still walk the rest of the day. Kra waved and explained that, according to the map, there was a path they could walk. Jur smiled, realizing it's been 2 weeks since they left town. The trip was going well, unlike his past travels, where he was constantly lost. Every time he traveled alone, he ended up in unknown places. To discover his location, he often had to climb high places, follow rivers leading to the ocean, or even find himself buried on the ground. But now, he didn't have to deal with these fights anymore, like he liked walking without worrying about getting lost. Kraha suddenly stopped him and pointed out he was going the wrong way. Jur then noticed that the flowers did not bloom that year. By the time he mentioned it, Kra noticed it too, and said she thought a lot of guys should be blooming by now. Curious, he asked how much she knew about plants. She replied that she had only learned a few things from a field guide. Jur looked at her, thinking she was impressive and never a burden. Then she asked him if the fist of a sword should rest against his wrist in a certain way. He said it depended on the situation. He started explaining the theory behind it in great detail, confusing her. After finishing your explanation, He remembered what his master called him boring. Now, here he was, teaching swordsmanship. After taking notes on key points, Kraha thanked him for the lesson. Jir thought to himself that everything, the journey, the training, was going well, which made him feel strangely anxious. Suddenly, she noticed that her strap was loose, so she came in to do it for him. He said he could handle it, but she did. It made him wonder if their relationship was really balanced. She was handling all the preparations for the trip, and her support had been constant. He worried that he might have become very dependent on her and thought his relationship should be more equal. Wanting to do something for her, he took a mushroom and showed it to her. She looked at the mushroom and informed Jir that it was poisonous, explaining that it can cause mouth ulcers and fever, although it has been surprisingly tasty. Upon hearing this, Jir immediately discarded the mushroom, its expression full of disappointment. Fun with her reaction, Kraha smiled and commented that she would stop sharing random food facts with him. Suddenly they noticed a strange pattern on the ground that shocked them. Jir turned to Kraha and asked what she thought about it. She touched the ground and noted that it looked like some kind of monster had crawled through the area. Jir mentioned that there were usually very few monsters in that region, especially because of the surrounding mountains, so he wanted to take care of them before anyone got hurt. Kraha then asked if there was a dojo in the city where they were going. Jir confirmed that, explaining that he was there 3 years ago. For several reasons, he had been attacked at the time, and the dojo had taken care of him for half a year later. He added that, coincidentally, his sword style and dojos were almost the same. Kraha asked if the owner of the dojo was Saminato and if the assistant instructor was Chikano. She recalled that Jir's new journey was to investigate the remains of the fallen king and find strong allies. Curious, she asked if they were both strong. Jir agreed, saying that if they had been invited to the future plan instead of him, they would still have been able to stop the resurrection of the fallen king. As they followed the trail, they noticed that it ended near some bushes. Curious, they made their way to the bushes in the forest. Kraha turned to Jir and asked what he thought about it. He guessed it might be a trap. Hearing that, she asked if he would let her deal with it. Jir gave her a suspicious look, but eventually agreed, saying he'd support her from behind. She drew her sword, preparing for any hidden danger. As he advanced, he was thirsty for blood nearby and was preparing to strike first. However, when she was about to attack, a big monster suddenly shot her from behind. Thanks to the rapid reflexes, she managed to avoid the attack in time. She knew her magic wasn't strong enough to kill the monster, but it was enough to create an opening. Using this opportunity, she prepared to counterattack. However, the monster unleashed a mighty roar and struck her, sending her to flight. Seeing this, Jir immediately went into action, taking your sword and running to save you from the beast. When Jir was about to attack, an arrow flew through the air. Thanks to his quick reflexes, he managed to escape. The arrow, however, struck the monster, killing him instantly. Jir was surprised and wondered if the arrow had been made for him. Kraha, equally intrigued, questioned what had just happened. But then Jir suddenly realized that the arrow had come from the same person they were talking about before, the one who had taken care of him. However, they were still several miles from the city, so he couldn't understand where the arrow had been fired from. Before thinking more, Kraha pointed out that the monster's body was still writhing. At that moment, a boy named Ika appeared at incredible speed and quickly ended the creature. Jir, sitting with a smile, commented that Ika had become stronger. He smiled and said he knew someone as tough as he would like it. They finally arrived in town and met Samina, the person who had taken care of Jir in the past. Samina pointed out how Jir had gone from a dragon slayer to the fallen king sealer, but he remained modest as ever. Embarrassed, Jir blushed and joked that he must have inherited such good characteristics of Samina. He then asked if Jir had come for help against those connected to the fallen king. Meanwhile, Kraha observed him closely, realizing that he was not only a former pair of Jir's mentor, but also the person who shaped Jir's idea of strength. Although Samina agreed to help, he mentioned it wasn't the best time. Jur guessed it was because of the mountain monsters, so Samina confirmed it. He explained that their city wasn't the only one fighting. There have been reports of monster activity in 3 different locations across the country. He wasn't sure if he was connected to the fallen king, but for now, their priority was to keep the city safe. He nodded in understanding, saying that he had only come to give them an early warning. For official cooperation, he explained that the church or government of the Magic Federation would contact them. Samina smiled, thanked him for his understanding, and then mocked Jur, saying that whenever he got nervous, he looked like an old man. Jur was speechless in the comment. He then told her to feel at home before returning to Kraha and asking if she was a student of Jir. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled and performed as Kraha, explaining that Jir was teaching his sword skills in recent weeks. All of a sudden, Jir heard something and realized it was time for a shift change. Turning his attention to Kraha, he mentioned that since they only recently became master and student, they were destined to have many concerns. He assured them that if they need anything, they could ask him. Jir thanked and Samina left. Kraha then commented that Samina seemed incredibly strong. She pointed out that she could see through his eyes and the way he behaved. Laughed had agreed, adding that this is where his sword style and dojo style began to differ. He then asked for her thoughts about the increase in monster activity in the region, and if she thought she was connected to the fallen king. After thinking for a moment, she replied that monster activity itself was a common disaster that took place from time to time. However, the fact that this particular monster was smart enough to hide her presence made her feel that it was too strong to be just another creature that had come out of the maze. Still, she admitted that maybe she felt that way because she was too weak. Jir agreed with her and suggested they investigate later. For now, he said, they should go to their rooms. Kraha agreed, but when she was about to get up, she had a leg cramp. Jir quickly held her leg and told her not to worry, he'd take care of it. While he was taking care of her leg, Ika suddenly appeared, and curiously asked if he was interrupting something. Jir quickly denied, but he just smiled and left, leaving them in a strange silence. They followed him and Eka asked if they were traveling together. Jir confirmed and laughed, saying he would no longer have to worry about getting lost. Jir, equally excited, agreed. So Ika turned to Kraha and told her that if she had any questions, she could ask him, since he had been living there for a long time. She politely bowed and thanked him, which shocked him. He didn't expect Jir's student to be so polite. Watching Ika's reaction, Jir felt angry and wondered what kind of impression he had of him. Soon after, a girl passed by, leaving them all stunned. They quickly realized it was Chikano. She stopped, looked at them, and even more shocked, he called Jir little. Finding her look, she sarcastically asked if he wanted to thank her for saving him in the woods. Ika turned to Kraha and said, "Let's not get involved with these weirdos before we leave." Kraha followed him, confused. As they walked, he explained that Jir and Chikano met after Jir killed the dragon. Originally, the mission was to be done by Saminato and Chikano, but they were deceived by a false report and ended up in the opposite direction to the location of the dragon. Meanwhile, Instructor Valfield and Jir stumbled over the dragon and took care of him. He added that Chikano wasn't happy about it. She immediately attacked Jir to test whether he had actually killed the dragon, and the two ended up fighting for 3 days and nights. Eventually Chikano fainted from exhaustion, and as soon as Jir ran to her to finish the fight, he started foaming at the mouth and passed out too. But somehow, before anyone knew it, they became good friends. Another reason to call them freaks. When they arrived in Kraha's room, Ika smiled and asked if, as a Jir student, she must be strong. However, she sighed and admitted that she was really very weak. He laughed and said that Jir always claimed to be inexperienced too, but see how strong he became. So he told her to call him in an hour if she wanted to play and when she was free before she left. Kraha stood there, feeling a little down, thinking she really needed to work harder. Meanwhile, Eunice was reading the letters she received from Lily and Jir. He was surprised to learn that Jir had other friends besides him, especially because he had sent a book to Jir. In her letter, Lily mentioned that she was trapped in church headquarters, joking that she was basically acting like a paperweight. She also told Eunice that they needed to do their best in relation to the rejuvenation of monsters, as it seemed to be affecting more than the apocryphal beasts. She warned them not to let their guard down, and even included a drawing of a raccoon dog, with which she thought Jir might be fighting. Jir was sitting inside the training room, smiling while reading the cards while Kraha was training nearby. While he was writing his answers, he expressed his shock because they thought he had no other friends. He also personally thanked Eunice for the book Why Can't You Make Friends? 7 Causes of Solitude, saying that he immediately read it and found it very informative. Suddenly Chikano appeared and looked at the book that Jir was reading, curious why he was reading in the first place. However, when she noticed the title, she hesitated before asking if he wanted to talk about it. Jir assured him it was no big deal and explained that he had received the book from a friend. She seemed intrigued and questioned whether the person who gave her the book about making friends was really her friend. Jir simply waved, confirming that they were. When they turned their attention to Kraha, who was training hard, Chikano commented that he seemed to be doing well. However, she asked Jir if, since Krao had been part of a Shrank party before, wouldn't it be better to move her to the next level? Jir sighed and admitted that he wished he had understood her better before taking her under his wing. Chikano turned his eyes and called him annoying, saying she didn't have time to get involved in such troublesome things. She then mentioned that she wouldn't be around for the rest of the day since she had custody in the morning at night and started leaving. Jir offered to take over, but she shook her head and thanked him for the offer. However, she explained that only she and her father were on guard at the watchtower because they were the only ones who had arranged to attack beyond the city limits. She also mentioned that as it was raining today, visibility would already be limited. With that, she left. Jir spent some time teaching Kraha some sword techniques and observed how she practiced. While watching her, she suddenly heard someone screaming her name. Before he could react, Ika attacked him, trying to kick him. However, Jir effortlessly blocked the attack, leaving Ika frustrated. Ika complained that Jir was the only one there that day. In response, Jir simply smiled and pointed out that it was because of the rain. Ika, still angry, looked at him, but Jir explained that Ika's special technique had the potential to electrocute everyone around him, making it unsafe for him to patrol in a group. Despite the explanation, Ika argued that Instructor Saminato and Chikano would be fine. Jir laughed and remembered that they were far from ordinary people. So he mentioned an old saying about the right person being assigned to the right job, and asked Ika how he would feel if Jir suddenly announced that he would patrol alone. Listening to this, Ika's frustration turned into resignation because he admitted it would be a complete disaster. Jir agreed, and Ika, now a little fun, commented on Jir's incredible ability to persuade people. With this, the two sat together, quietly watching Kraha as she continued her training. Jir was beginning to feel bored sitting there, so he asked Ika why he had come first. Ika replied that he wanted to fight Kraha, but she wasn't strong enough to make it interesting. Jir recognized that Ika had improved, although he admitted there was still a significant gap in the strength between him and Kraha. He praised Ika's progress, which made him feel a little happier. Jir then assured you Kraha would be all right. He explained that she was working hard to identify her strengths and weaknesses, gradually connecting everything she had learned. In time, she would no doubt become stronger. So you asked Ika if she wasn't doing a good job as her teacher. However, instead of answering, Ika screamed that he didn't care and started crying, complaining that he wished he had gone on patrol. Meanwhile, in the city, the guards gathered to report shift change and exchange information. Just as they were about to take a break, a little mouse suddenly appeared in front of them. They hesitated, not sure if it was just a common rodent or a magical beast, not wanting to let down their guard. A moment later, they were frozen in shock by what they had witnessed. At the same time, an assessment alarm sounded loud, scaring Jir, Krahe and Eka. Jir turned to Ika and asked what the alarm meant. Ika quickly explained that it signaled a magical beast emergency. Without wasting time, he took them out of the training area, hoping to find the remaining defenders of the city. However, due to the shock, no one else was there. The panic came into his voice as he wondered what he was supposed to do, now that he was apparently alone. Krya examined the terrain and asked if this place was designated as an evacuation site. Ika confirmed, and Jir immediately turned to Kraha, asking if she remembered the layout of the city. She replied that she had a difficult idea of when they arrived, including the escape routes. Hearing this, Jir quickly jumped to the roof and instructed her to guide him from there. Before Kraha could answer, a loud scream came from the watchtower. It was Chikano, calling Jir and advising him to go north as she went south. Jir hesitated for a moment. I was wondering if she meant up north. Irritated by your confusion, Chikano fired an arrow in the intended direction, making it clear. Without hesitation, Jir followed the path indicated by the arrow, calling Kraha and Ika to hold the fort in his absence. Jir followed the direction of the arrow while Ika was there, confused and insecure about what to do next. Seeing this, Kraha ran away, saying he was going to schedule the evacuation routes. Ika, worried about her safety, decided to follow her, saying it was too dangerous for her to go alone in this situation. Kraha used her skills to start marking the routes, but as she worked, she wondered what she should do next. She decided to go downtown, since she knew the monsters were coming from the north and the south. She thought it best to focus on the center for now. She told Ika that, if they could block these paths and indicate some deviation routes, it should be enough for now. Ika followed her, but suddenly he noticed a monster heading towards Kraha. Without hesitation, he ran forward and quickly killed him. Kraha was shocked, realizing how close she was to being attacked. Ika casually said she'd stay with her because she had nothing else to do. As they continued, Krya noticed that they had already traveled a significant distance. She realized that the monsters were invading much faster than she expected. Meanwhile, at the North Gate, the adventurers faced a large number of monsters, though the monsters were small. They had the advantage of numbers. The adventurers started fighting them, waiting for reinforcements. Suddenly, Jir appeared, using his lightning ability to kill many of the monsters at the same time. The adventurers were relieved to see him and applauded. Jir told them he would take care of everything outside the barrier and then strengthen it again. However, when he was about to move, a monster passed him. He couldn't believe it, but one of the adventurers quickly gave him a replacement sword. With a new weapon, Jir began to take down the monsters one by one. While fighting, he noticed a magical stone among the monsters and realized they were apocryphal beasts. He quickly instructed the adventurers to hurry and close the barrier. Looking around, Jir noted that all monsters were mid-level beasts, which seemed strange. Still smaller beasts would normally be strong enough to destroy the city, so the presence of these mid-level beasts left him with a feeling of discomfort. On the other hand, Ika and Kraha were also fighting monsters within the city. Ika admitted that his decision to go downtown was right, but he couldn't help but wonder how many monsters they were facing. Kraha, however, was sure that the real threat was not his individual strength, the number of monsters they faced. One of the adventurers mentioned that they needed to end the impasse, but she suddenly had a plan. She started explaining her idea to them, and while the adventurers were confused about the plan, he recognized that it could work in theory. However, he pointed out that the timing would be complicated. She then revealed that she could use her communication spell, and the range would be a problem. They were both shocked to hear that, but quickly approved the plan. She then used her spell to convey the message, telling everyone that the dojo unit had agreed, and now they were ready to execute the plan. She then stood in the watchtower, guiding everyone with her communication spell. While investigating the situation, she knew that her role was to take them to safety, but she also wondered what would be the best move at this chaotic time. She examined the environment, trying to analyze when the perfect opportunity to act would come. As soon as she saw it, she screamed and signaled everyone. The adventurers quickly created a spot for Ika, and with a mighty blow to the ground, Ika has unleashed a huge ray. The lightning appeared in all directions, instantly killing the monsters around them. However, the force of the attack left Ika drained and unable to move. He fell to the ground, coughing, surrounded by smoke. Despite your exhaustion, the adventurers applauded and celebrated Ika's success, praising him for his incredible achievement. Ika, who was still there, not believing it worked. He was overwhelmed with applause, but he was also unsure of what had happened. Suddenly, he noticed something. A figure was walking near, and when his eyes met, Ika was stunned. He couldn't help wondering if what was in front of him was really a demon. As Ika looked at the devil, memories of his training appeared in his mind. He remembered to learn about creatures that should never fight. The first creature was a dragon, a beast so powerful that only Jir and his master managed to kill one. The second was a calamity of which only legends were spoken. A creature that resembled a man but was not one. He was a demon. Seeing the demon before him, Ika was frozen in shock, unable to believe his eyes. From the watchtower, Kraha also looked in disbelief. The presence of a demon was something none of them expected. Feeling the danger, an archer quickly fired an arrow to distract the demon and draw his attention away from Ika. However, as the arrow approached the demon, she simply looked at him, and with a simple look, the arrow shattered to pieces. The next moment, the demon unleashed its power, destroying the entire watchtower in an instant. Despite the sudden attack, Kraha and the others managed to land safely on the ground, avoiding serious injuries. Ika sat frozen, looking at the demon, realizing that it was on a level completely different from anything he had ever faced. A deep feeling of fear covered him as he understood the terrible truth. If they fought this creature, everyone would die. His mind returned to childhood, memories of his training and fears resurrecting. But instead of yielding, he tightened his grip on a sword, determined to stop it. With an explosion of determination, Ika jumped into the air to attack the demon. However, before getting a blow, the demon effortlessly stole his tail, ordering him to fall to the ground. While he was struggling to recover, Kraha quickly walked in front of him, standing on her floor. She turned to him and asked him to catch Jir while holding the demon. Before she could answer, the demon moved with incredible speed, grabbing Kraha in her hand. Her penetrating gaze left her completely paralyzed with fear, just as it seemed that all hope was lost. A sudden attack interrupted demon control. Saminato appeared, his blade cutting the creature, forcing it to release Kraha. Still shaken, Kraha was in shock, struggling to process what was happening. Creatures like this only existed in fairy tales, so why was one before them now? Meanwhile, Saminato advanced without hesitation, facing the devil with unwavering determination. His eyes were burning with determination while pointing his weapon at the monstrous being, making it clear that if the demon were looking for a fight, he would be the only one to face it. Meanwhile, at the north gate, Jir was still struggling with the creatures when he received news that a powerful demon had appeared in the center of the city, and Master Saminato was fighting it. In the center of the city, Saminato attacked the demon repeatedly, managing to hurt him. However, due to its incredible regeneration, the wounds healed instantly, leaving the demon as strong as before. The battle between the two continued, with both exchanging fierce attacks. Kraha, watching the fight unfold, I noticed that Saminato was clearly dominating the demon. She held Ika in her lap, checking her condition, and saw that while he had injuries, none were fatal, which means he would soon recover. So Ika opened her eyes and insisted on helping. Kraha tried to stop him, but before she could react, the demon suddenly abandoned his fight with Saminato and flew right into them. Kraha froze while the demon roared, realizing the danger they were in, especially because Ika still couldn't move. As the demon was about to attack, Saminato appeared and blocked his attack, declaring that it would release all force from its second explosion. However, before he could react, the demon suddenly disappeared, and reappeared behind him, pierced his hand behind Saminato's back. Saminato was stunned, unable to understand what had just happened. Kraha was also left in shock, unable to believe her eyes. One moment, the demon was in front of them. Next time, he teleported behind Saminato in an instant. Despite his injury, Salmonato tried to continue fighting, refusing to give up. But before he could launch another attack, the demon struck with crushing power, destroying him completely. When Salmonato fell, the demon unleashed a threatening laugh, revealing his victory. Suddenly an arrow flew towards the devil, but quickly jumped to a roof near, without effort, avoiding the attack. Instead of worrying, he started laughing. Chikano, believing the reinforcements had arrived and that Jir would be there soon, fired several arrows at the demon. However, despite his tireless attacks, the demon easily avoided each shot, continuing to laugh ridicule. Then, without warning, he disappeared into thin air. Kraha saw how the demon disappeared and immediately decided to inform Chikano that he had escaped north. Meanwhile, other people arrived and quickly took Ika to treat her injuries. Sitting on the floor, Kraha felt powerless. The realization of her own weakness weighed heavily on her, filling her with disappointment. Several days later, Jir sat down reading letters from Eunice and Lily. In her letter, Lily informed him about the beasts and mentioned a powerful demon known as the 13th Gate Demon, which belonged to the Middle Order. She explained that there were no previous reports of such abilities as attacks by demons or teleportation. However, with the reappearance of the apocryphal beasts, the Holy Knights had been sent and the Church had been burdened with the crisis. Because of this, it became difficult for them to send help elsewhere. Lily then revealed that due to the situation, they had decided to grant Jir special combat clearance. She instructed him to review the attached documents for further details, explaining that he would now be treated with the same authority as a saint or an archer. She apologized for forcing him to play such a dangerous role, but she assured them that they would be eternally grateful for your help. Finally, she added that if he wanted to reject the authorization, he was free to do so. She ended the letter with another apology, regretting not being able to help him personally. Jir then read Eunice's letter. He mentioned he was trapped in the Grand Library, just like them. Eunice wished them the best of luck and personally assured Jir that he would continue to work hard to send reinforcements as soon as possible. After reading both letters, Jir responded by thanking him for his support. He recognized that they were as busy as he was, as they were all wanderers who now carried the responsibilities of their respective organizations. He made sure he'd stay in touch if something urgent happened. In your answer to Lily, Jir mentioned that he was using sanctuary charms to strengthen his defensive lines. He also reported that while the antidoto charms had not been able to fully heal Salmonato, they at least stabilized his condition for now. He expressed his deep gratitude to Lily for providing such valuable help. Finally, he also thanked Eunice for her help and apologized for being a burden to him. While Jir was in the rain, he thought to himself that 8 days had passed since the demons attacked, and they had done all they could. It was raining all the time, only then did the shifts change, and the other adventurers stood by under an umbrella. They asked Jir if he wanted to join them, but he refused, saying he would bathe in the rain. They then mentioned the magical stones that could be used to bathe in this world and asked if he was aware of them. Jir confirmed he knew about them. Curious, they joked that maybe he hated bathing like his dogs. Jir denied, explaining that he was simply traveling. One of them suggested that while he was in town, he should try to live as a civilized person. Jir agreed, and they all stayed under the umbrella. They only had one, so he asked how many people would fit under it. They explained that everyone had forgotten their umbrellas, except one person, and confirmed that there was room for one more. Suddenly, Ika laughed and pointed at a girl alone in the distance with an umbrella. Jir looked and saw it was Kraha. Without hesitation, he walked towards her and held the umbrella for her. So he apologized for taking hers earlier. Kraha smiled and said it was okay, since she had gladly offered. Jir then asked Kraha what she would be doing today. She said she'd be on patrol from noon. However, she was more concerned about him and Chikano since they were working 12-hour shifts. Jir admitted it was difficult, but he assured her that in any battle, such difficulties were commonplace. He and Chikano became good at regaining their strength. Still, he recognized that things were getting harder with time and they needed to act. He then shared something from Lely's letter. According to the apocryphals, these creatures were described as appearing in large numbers. At first, he thought it meant just a swarm of rats. But 2 days later, the tigers showed up, the next day rabbits showed up, then came horses, and today there were monkeys. He explained that they all had identical numbers and marks, as if they were the same kind of beast. Meanwhile, Kraha was writing notes as she asked if it meant there were many different species. She was thinking deeply, and Jir explained that they could not continue doing what they were doing. At the same time, they could not launch a total attack without an asset. She agreed with him. Realizing that she was thinking deeply, Jir asked what was on her mind. Kraha explained that all species seemed to be moving in a common direction, whether northeast or east-north. She wanted to know if it was possible that the apocryphal beasts were hiding somewhere in that area. While she murmured it to herself, Jid stood there, amazed by her vision, completely impressed by how amazing her thinking was. After a while, Jir reached the watchtower and found Chikano there. He gave her the battle report, and she read through it, pointing out it was well done. Jir mentioned that he had just copied Kraha's report. Chikano then noticed the second sheet, a chart on the current condition of the garrison, and said it was very well drawn. He agreed, saying Kraha was very good. Jir looked at the rice ball and said they couldn't take much more because everyone was mentally exhausted and their numbers were decreasing every day. Chikano asked if they should reduce their numbers even further, but Jir said it would only increase their workload. Instead, he suggested that they should focus on intensifying people who were able to handle more. While arguing, Chikano realized with shock that the number of people who could work was getting smaller and smaller. Jir told her to relax and eat the rice balls. She asked if he knew it was hers, but he ignored the question and asked if it was time for Ika to return to service. She didn't answer, so Jir asked if Ika was hurt more than he thought. She was thinking deeply, and Jir explained that they could not continue doing what they were doing. At the same time, they could not launch a total attack without an asset. She agreed with him. Realizing that she was thinking deeply, Jir asked what was on her mind. Chikano said it wasn't that, she just didn't want to let him fight. Jir said when she finished, he'd make some adjustments to her proposal. Chikano provoked him, calling him Mr. Special Combat Authority. Jir smiled, saying he seemed very strong. Chikano laughed and said that's why he pissed her off a little bit. He took the umbrella and started walking around town, thinking about their current situation. He realized that if things went on like this, it would only lead to wear and tear. If he and Chikano fell, everything would fall apart. As he pondered, he thought there was no doubt that what Kraja had said could be true. But why did a mighty apocryphal beast appear the night the fallen king was resolved? That was a good point, but as he was lost in thought, he suddenly realized he had lost his way. Confused, he stopped and screamed, asking Kraja where he was. Kraja, listening to her voice, looked around, perplexed, wondering where she came from.